How we doing? A lot of smiling faces out there. Okay. Ms. Patterson, why don't you kick us off? We're going to start with, obviously, invocation and pledge, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We're having an invocation by Senior Pastor Heath Jarvis from Faith Life Worship Center.
Okay, and then we'll have the pledge. Will be led by Ms. Rafaela Zapata, who is our Supervisor of the Year. You'll hear more about that later.
Good morning, everyone. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we come before you today. We're thankful that we live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Lord, we're thankful for being able to live here in America. We're thankful for being here in Florida. But Lord, we're thankful to see your hand of protection and provision over us here in Southwest Florida. Today, God, we have the opportunity to discuss some important topics that affect everyone who live in this community. So we ask for your guidance as we discuss these issues. Help us to discuss these things with civility, patience, and respect. Most of all, Lord, help us to make only the decisions that will best benefit Collier County and her citizens in her future. Lord, I also want to pray for our leadership here in Collier County. They have important conversations ahead of them today and the responsibility to make wise and informed decisions on behalf of our community. Lord, I pray for your peace over them and over their families and a blessing for all of them. Your word tells us in the book of James that if we ask for your wisdom, you will give it to us liberally. You'll give it to us in generous abundance. So we ask for it today, and we receive it thankfully by faith. I pray this according to your word, and I pray this in the name and the authority of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Ms. Zapata, lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice job, family.
Very sweet.
You could bring adults in here from the community who don't know the pledge, and you got these beautiful children up here just banging it out. Good job, Mom and Dad. Good job. Proud of you. And thank you, Pastor. We always get really great invocations here, but as many pastors often remind me, it doesn't count as church unless they pass the basket around, okay? So I don't think you're getting out of Sunday because the pastor gave an incredible invocation. It doesn't count. It's a freebie. Ms. Patterson, next.
I'll take you all through the changes to the agenda. First, we have moving item 16F5 to item 11D. This item was continued from the December 10th, 2022 BCC meeting. It's a recommendation to approve an increase of authorized expenditures through an exemption from the competitive process to JW Marriott Marco Island for tourism promotional expenses up to $85,000 per fiscal year for a 5-year period, and to make a finding that this expenditure promotes tourism and that the exemption waiver is in the best interest of the county. This was moved to the regular agenda via the separate requests of Commissioner Saunders, LaCastro, and McDaniel. Move item 16F7 to item 11E. This is a recommendation to approve a change order number 3 and change order number 4 under agreement number 19-7650, Golden Gate Golf Course Redevelopment Project, providing for a time extension of 730 days and a realigning of task funding with a $0 change, and to approve payment of invoices for the work associated with change orders number 3 and number 4, which was verbally staff directed prior to the approval of those change orders. This is being moved to the regular agenda via separate requests of Commissioner Saunders and Commissioner LaCastro. Move item 16F6 to item 11F. This item is continued from the December 10th, 2022 BCC meeting. This is a recommendation to approve an increase of authorized expenditures through an exemption from the competitive process to Visit Florida for membership fees and destination marketing programs up to $150,000 per fiscal year for a 5-year period to allow purchasing card use when the use of purchase order is not possible or practical, to make a finding that these expenditures promote tourism and that the exemption waiver is in the best interest of the county. This is being moved via separate request by Commissioner McDaniel and Commissioner LaCastro. You have a note that item 10D references 24th Avenue Northwest. That road is now known as Autumn Oaks Lane. We have 2 times certain items. At 9:30 is the discussion regarding Quiet Florida. And item 10B relative to the draft escrow agreement for the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs will be heard following item 15B, staff project updates, at the very end of the agenda. We do have court reporter breaks scheduled for 10:30 and 2:50.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, we make a motion to approve the changes and today's regular consent agenda, correct?
Unless any board members have any changes or ex parte on the summary agenda.
I'll start with you, Commissioner Cole. Do you have any changes or any ex parte on anything on today's agenda?
No changes and no ex partes.
Okay. Commissioner Saunders?
No additional changes and no ex parte.
Okay. Commissioner Hall?
None.
Okay. McDaniel?
Same, no, I have none.
All right, sir. Me as well, no changes, no ex parte. So motion to approve all.
I'll make a motion to approve all.
Okay, I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next.
Item 2B is approval of the January 24th, 2023 BCC meeting minutes.
I'll move for approval as printed.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Approve unanimously. Next.
Item 3 is awards and recognitions. We have several employees with us today. We'll start with our 20-year attendees. We have 20 years, Manuel Arca, road maintenance, heavy equipment operator.
All right. "20 years, started when he was 6, right? Come on, hey, 20? Congratulations, sir. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sir? Thank you.
Oh, wait, no, we got, come on, we got a picture here for the front and center, right here.
Let's run off and grab that backhoe.
All right, all right.
20 years, Ramon Arca Jr., road maintenance, heavy equipment operator.
You guys look like twins. Is this the same guy? Wait, this is, are you punking us or something or what? Huh?
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Stand still.
Moving target.
20 years, Ruth Quintero, Parks and Recreation, Recreation Specialist 1. Congratulations.
Okay.
That moves us on to 25-year attendees. 25 years, Juan Mesa, road maintenance, heavy equipment operator.
This is heavier, heavy equipment. Yeah. Come on. All right. Okay, let's see. What are we moving on to now?
Proclamations.
Yep.
Item 4A is a proclamation designating March 2023 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in Collier County, to be accepted by Karen Govern, Chief Executive Officer, Star Ability Foundation, and other distinguished guests.
I just couldn't. Yeah, yeah, I missed a good one. I saw the social media things. Hey, how are you?
There we go. On three. Smile. 1, 2, 3. 1 more. Thank you.
Would y'all like to say a few words? Or something? It's all yours.
Mom says you look nice.
Hi, Karen.
I'll tell her you said so.
Morning, everyone. I'm Karen Govern, the CEO of the Starability Foundation. With me today is Lisa Kahn Allen, Chair of our Board of Directors, Madison McNally, who is our Chief Program Officer and Director of our Trailblazer Academy, and two of our STAR participants, Hallie Clifford and Joe Shirley. On behalf of the Starability Board of Directors, our families, and most importantly, our stars, I'd like to thank you for this recognition. As we kick off National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, this proclamation is truly appreciated as it further helps shine a light on individuals with developmental disabilities and promotes greater understanding of the issues that affect these individuals and their families. It will also go a long way in helping to create opportunities for inclusion throughout our community. Founded in 1983 by a dedicated group of parents, our mission is to transform the lives of individuals with disabilities through social, vocational, and educational connections to the community while strengthening awareness and respect for individual abilities. Over the past 40 years, we have made an impact on hundreds of families' lives throughout Collier County through our innovative, inclusive, and community-based programming. Starability Foundation currently provides programming for more than 300 individuals, connecting our stars to inclusive employment, continuing education, wellness classes, sports leagues, and more. We truly believe in our life-transforming programs and call our participants stars because they brighten our lives, our communities, and our world. We appreciate your support of this proclamation, and we look forward to working with you to identify ways to serve more individuals in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And they just recently moved to a really impressive location. So they were sort of crammed into a little strip mall, and now they've got the top floor of a building just right down the road. So very impressive, lots of space, a lot more capability. So thank you for what you do for the community.
Item 4B is a proclamation recognizing Moorings Park Grand Lake as recipient of the Waste Reduction Awards Program. Award for contributing to the greater good of Collier County by advocating the reduce, reuse, recycle message, thereby helping to prolong the usable life of the Collier County landfill. This is going to be accepted by Ovi Manu, Director of Facilities, and Petra Miller, Director of Environmental Services.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
There you go. You got the hardware. Good seeing you again.
Would have forgotten.
Great. Would you like to say a few words? No?
We're good to go. He said we're good to go.
So I'll say a few words. Thank you for reducing, reusing, and recycling. Right? I mean, it is possible, right? So you're getting and that plaque is made from recycled materials. I just made that up. I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping it is. But thank you for what y'all are doing at Moorings Park. Appreciate it. All right, next.
Get a motion to accept the proclamations, please.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, approved unanimously.
Thank you. Item 5A is a recommendation to recognize Rafaela Zapata, Communications, Government, and Public Affairs Division, as the 2022 Supervisor of the Year. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how she became Supervisor of the Year. Each year, as part of the county's formal employee recognition program, the Human Resources Division facilitates the process to allow employees across the agency to submit nominations for the Supervisor of the Year. This year, names of 11 county supervisors were submitted for consideration, and 6 were ultimately ranked by the selection committee. Each nomination highlighted the diverse accomplishments, fortitude through adversity, and examples of exceptional leadership characteristics that demonstrate the commitment of these supervisors to making Collier County the best community in America to live, work, and play. Rafaela Zapata is an operations supervisor in the Communications, Government, and Public Affairs Division and has been employed with the county since March of 2011. RAF demonstrates extraordinary leadership capabilities in rallying her team, peers, management, and local partners towards the achievement of objectives. This is accomplished through her efforts at actively listening, creating detailed plans, effectively communicating, organizing her work, eagerly mentoring and training others, and displaying an energetic approach to serving the community. On Monday, September 26, 2022, 2 days before Hurricane Ian made landfall in Southwest Florida, RAF relocated the Collier 311 staff members to the Emergency Services Center. This operation soon grew into a large team of round-the-clock employees from across the agency, many needing training on 311 software, which RAF dutifully provided. Even though the 311 software program had never been used for a hurricane, she and the team were able to customize its functioning to accurately monitor incoming calls, properly route actions, and develop regular reports for management to review. RAF was responsible for intake, scheduling, training, maintaining the knowledge base, whiteboard updates, monitoring the high call volume, and providing call trend reporting to pinpoint gaps in service, impacts to safety, and identification of potential damage to critical infrastructure. The work that she and the Collier 311 team performed to support the community during Hurricane Ian directly contributed to expediting service response in not only unincorporated Collier County, but in our municipalities when the storm temporarily disabled their communications technology. For these reasons, Rafaela Zapata was selected as the 2022 Supervisor of the Year. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go. Let's get the whole family up here. Kids are like, yeah, we're missing school. Woo! Yeah, yeah. Mom, yeah, make a long speech. Yeah, field trip.
One, two, three.
All right. Congratulations. I know you're feeling a little bit under the weather, but I'll just say all of us up here spent a lot of time in the Emergency Operations Center during the Hurricane Ian, and that 311 room was so critical, and it literally was the nerve center of everything, but it was amazing some of the calls that were coming in there, right? I mean, hi, is Germain Cadillac open today? Yeah, I need an oil change. And we're like, well, we're trying to save the entire county post-hurricane, right? What's playing at the movie theater? Yeah, those are actual examples, right? But thank you for all you did to pull the team together, and obviously your coworkers think very highly of you, which they should. So congratulations. Okay. Ms. Patterson, what do we
Item
got?
7, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda.
Mr. Chair, we have 2 registered speakers for item 7 today. Christine Robbins, and she'll be followed by Daniel Zagaric. No, just pull the mic down. I'll take care of all that.
Good morning, Commissioners. We received a notice in our neighborhood from Grady Minor. This is regarding a building of a Home Depot in East Naples on the East Trail. Are you aware of that?
Of course.
And they want rezoning. So there is a general information meeting. However, I thought it would come today because they're saying 140,000 square feet. We live in the Hitching Post community. By the way, my name's Christine Robbins. And that, right across from us is our rec center, our pool and everything, and the RV area. They want to build this right in front of this. We already have a racetrack there. We have a lot of traffic there, a lot of accidents there. So we're figuring, how is all these people going to get in and out of there? But that's maybe the least of the worries. We have a Lowe's, we have a Sunshine Ace, and the Home Depot on Davis is like 10 minutes away. So what's the purpose of a Home Depot? The Home Depot's open 7 days a week, night and day. We are going to hear trucks. Beep, 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 back up. The noise pollution and, the air pollution on top of it. And it's pretty much right on top of us from what it looks like. Then we're going to have more trees that are going to come down where the wildlife live. We've had problems with all the development around us already with that. So that's another problem. You get rodent problems. And for us, that have lived in East Naples for a long time, up to 40 years, we've seen so many changes to our little area. And I just think the development in all of Naples is not what our founders really wanted. I realize there's a large impact, but when is it going to stop? When is it ever going to end? And why do we need businesses like this that we already have? I mean, how about building affordable housing there or in the property next to us where they tore down all those trees and everything there? Why not build they didn't build affordable housing. So I'm just asking the board if they would please consider rejecting the rezoning for a Home Depot. And if the developers want to develop something there, we would suggest some affordable housing for the people that work in Naples and can't afford to live here. Thank you.
Okay. Normally, like during public comment, we wouldn't, you're not asking us questions, but I'm the chair, and as Commissioner McDowell used to say, chair can take some liberties, right? So you had sent me an email with a typo in it, so that's why I know you were upset you didn't hear back in an hour, but I never got your email. I finally got it because you got with my assistant. In the email, I actually have pretty much typed it, but I'll send it to you at the first break. But I'll give you sort of the short version here. We haven't approved anything. So this is how the process works. When somebody wants to buy land, even you, if you want to buy a piece of property and you want to build a 3-story house and all your neighbors hate it, you still get to go through the process. So that notice is so you and citizens that maybe feel the same way can go and express your displeasure. So this is the final stop, even if it ever comes to us. So this is, right now they're at step 0. This is step 100. And so a whole lot of things have to happen. And so as government, we can't look at a request by any homeowner, even you, if you wanted to build a house and say, we're going to just discontinue the whole process because we already know we don't want it. I mean, that's government overreach. So this is a process where you have a landowner who could decide they want to build anything, and this is a notice to the community. It also, like you said, do we all know about it? Yes, everybody here knows about it because it will eventually come to us. Possibly. It could get shut down after the neighborhood information meeting because a whole bunch of neighbors voice professional and mature discussion with the developer, which happens. We've had developers that have said, juice isn't worth the squeeze, heard from some neighbors and, we're not looking to shoehorn something in there. Or they might say, hey, we know the neighbors don't like it, but after a 3-hour meeting, we discovered that they actually hate it less. We don't know that. We don't have a crystal ball. So your comments are very much appreciated and respected. And now that you have my proper email and I have yours, you will hear from me immediately. But a lot of what I say in there is to, and hopefully you can take this message back to your neighbors that when we get a request by anyone, a resident, a company, or what have you, we can't judge it on face value and say, no, they automatically get to go through the process. But the process has a lot of wickets, a lot of public comment, And even should it eventually wind up in here, it'll hit the planning commission first. They will make a recommendation, then it'll come to us, and that's a bit down the road. So this is step 0. It's starting, and if other people feel the way you do, there's a process where you can be heard and to the developer. And I highly recommend you take every opportunity to go to those neighborhood information meetings and be heard and try to talk with the developer and see what maybe their thoughts are, if they agree or disagree. And there's many, many more steps before it comes here for a vote. We haven't voted on anything. We haven't even seen any of this, nor would we. So I just thought I would say that. But I appreciate you coming here. Now that I've seen your email, I saw it for the first time this morning, and I'm going to give you some of that. So if you want to forward it to people in your community, and this is our district, District 1. So yeah, I'm very well aware. Please spread the facts so that folks, don't feel like they're getting blindsided by something. This is merely a request by someone who wants to buy property or who bought it. And that's the process they go through. And trust me, it's my district, so I will watch it very carefully. I'm not going to make a premature decision. That would be like sending somebody to, jail without hearing from both sides. But there's a long process that will happen.
So it hasn't been bought yet then?
That I don't know, but it's possible it hasn't been.
Okay.
It's possible that they want to dip their toe in the water and see what the citizens say, and there's several different ways they could come at this. I don't know that answer if it's been bought or
Thanks for explaining the process.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm glad I came, and I'm glad to get your email because
You think I would ignore one of my constituents?
No. I couldn't get a hold of your assistant, and this just came on Thursday, and we're like, oh my goodness, and I knew you met.
Yes, ma'am.
Before.
Yes, ma'am.
So I thought, well, come and voice it now, and then, but of course we'll be at the 13th meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Christine.
I really appreciate
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, your final registered speaker for item 7 is Daniel Zagaric.
I've never seen this guy before.
Commissioner LaCastro, you went way over your 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Your concern for our partners in the Golden Gate project is overwhelming. Please remember that each and every concession that you make may come at a cost to the taxpayers. Show us that you are capable of such a project without giving up the farm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miller, anything?
That's all we have for item 7, sir.
Okay. So we've heard from public comment. I guess we'll roll right into our 9:30 time certain. Right, ma'am.
At the board's pleasure, we could start the 9:30 time certain now.
Absolutely.
Yep, this is a recommendation to have the board discuss the request by Quiet Florida to reduce the noise pollution from illegal vehicle modifications. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Sir?
Mr. Chairman, members, I brought this forward just really to help continue to educate the board on a problem that is really very serious. It affects thousands of our residents. Mary Tedigan is here. I'm going to ask her to come on up and make a presentation concerning Quiet Florida, what that organization is, and what they're looking to accomplish. Or am I on the right? Okay, just make sure I'm on the right agenda item. And to make sure that the board understands what the needs are and perhaps to give staff some direction after her presentation.
Great. Mary? The floor is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss the modified muffler issue plaguing our community. And a special thanks to Commissioner Bert Saunders for putting this on the agenda. My name is Mary Tadigan. I am president of Quiet Florida, which is a community organization which we started about 2 years ago related to the noise pollution from aircraft and vehicles, motor vehicles. We have thousands of members, and we are growing daily. I have elderly citizens contact me, tell me they're trapped in their homes. I've actually had retired military contact me, and they're suffering with PTSD, and the chronic noise is upsetting them. Unfortunately, we've had a drastic change in traffic and growth in Naples, which all means more noise. We all know there is a huge problem with modified mufflers, and we need your help. Think of it, the inability to relax while sitting in your own home, inside your home, the noise, and also on your own property. the inability to have peace and quiet. I, for one, think it's un-American. The noise permeates our homes and robs us of peace and quiet. We are left unable to enjoy the outside. It's almost impossible for us to enjoy it. The noise is coming from modified mufflers on dump trucks, motorcycles, cars, and trucks. As a registered nurse of 30 years, I know the damage that noise pollution can cause, and that was only solidified by the EPA and the World Health Organization, who both state the detriment to human health and wildlife related to noise pollution. Noise pollution can cause cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, hearing loss, cognition changes, especially in children, and lack of sleep. Lack of sleep causes a whole host of metabolic problems such as diabetes and obesity. We're asking for your help. As tax-paying citizens, we feel we deserve that. We need to make changes because it is possible. We just need the will, and your will. Our law enforcement officers are doing everything they can to do with the manpower they have. They need assistance. It can not all be laid on their shoulders. Quiet Florida backs law enforcement 150%. Technology is available. Noise meter cameras, which are being used in many states and cities, New York City, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, California, Tennessee, as well as Florida. Miami Beach is using noise meter cameras on a trial basis. What is a noise camera? Noise cameras or acoustic cameras are equipped with audio sensors that are triggered by cars and other vehicles that exceed predefined noise limits. They also feature automated number plate recognition, or ANPR technology, which can read license plates to help identify lawbreakers. In the UK, where these cameras were developed between the months of June 2021 and February 2022, in those cities, cameras ticketed or caught 10,000 vehicles triggered by the cameras. We're only asking for a trial. We're only asking for you to think outside the box and help us. The camera technology would require less manpower on the streets and no confrontation of the officer when he has to stop a civilian or stop a car to ticket them for modified mufflers. Less confrontation, safer for everyone. We will be receiving data from Commissioner Stephen Miner, who we are partnering with from Miami, on how he's doing and how their noise cameras are working in that area. I've put out an email to him, so I'm just waiting on that data, and I will get that to you. Also, we need to assign a task force specifically for this issue in our community. Educating the community, including schools. We could use newspapers, your newsletters, have ads on TV, all stating that modified mufflers are against the law. There are statutes. It is illegal. We could contact body shops, auto shops, car dealers, and make them aware of the consequences. How about redesigning some of the streets and the roads by using speed bumps, more lights, anything, roundabouts at intersections, to try to slow this traffic down so these people are unable to race. With school bus stops on every corner between Vanderbilt and Pine Ridge, why can't we slow the traffic down? There's a lot of people that live very close to that, and we wake up at 5:30 a.m. with modified mufflers, and we listen to them all weekend long. Our group and other citizens who are affected feel as though we've been robbed of our peace and quiet by the individuals, just a few, it's not a lot, but they're out there, terrorizing our neighborhoods. We would like your help in getting that peace back. Thank you.
Sir?
Mr. Chairman, members, one of the, I would like to see if, I think Lieutenant Bruning is here. I'd like for him to come on up for a few moments and just kind of explain what the sheriff has been doing. Sheriff Raumbach has been very receptive to trying to help solve this problem, but he doesn't really have the manpower to address it fully. Senator Pasadomo last year presented legislation that was approved that clarified some of the issues dealing with penalties for modified mufflers and those types of activities. So there is also a task force or a study that's being done by the legislature that I think will come out sometime in May or June that will talk about how bad this problem is and what some of the solutions are. In the meantime, I wanted to get the commission thinking in terms of our upcoming budget, what the sheriff may need to help enforce some of the existing laws, and also to perhaps direct staff to come back to us with some information on how noise cameras work and what impact they could have. I will make a distinction between a noise camera and a red light camera. A red light camera, you're targeting a driver, and you have to know who's driving the car. Anybody can loan their car to somebody and they can run a red light, and all of a sudden they're being ticketed for running a red light. With a noise camera, the vehicle really is in violation. The owner of the vehicle is in violation by modifying their mufflers. And so I think it's a little bit of a distinction that I think is important. So anyway, I would like to ask Lieutenant Bruning if he would explain what the sheriff has been doing and what perhaps the sheriff would need going forward.
Good morning, Commissioners. Let me first give you an overview of 316-293, which is the noise ordinance. It's a fairly lengthy ordinance or law, fairly lengthy law. Most of it starts out with decibel readings, which from a operational law enforcement standpoint is really hard to for us to enforce. So what we are doing is we're enforcing the law under 5B, which says no person shall operate a motor vehicle upon the highways of the state with an exhaust system or noise abatement device so modified. So with that being said, it leads to complications. We have to be able to testify that we knew the vehicle was modified. That limits us to the cars that are grossly modified, things like the Hondas and the Toyotas that we know for a fact didn't come from the factory that way. Something that I've recently discovered is some of the we've actually went to the dealerships, Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, and talked to their service managers about the cars, the sports cars. A lot of them actually have a sport mode, and when engaged, it will change the exhaust. And I'll read directly out of the Ford manual that says, the track exhaust mode setting is only used at tracks and not for use on public roadways. So this is a legal car that can become illegal with the push of a button. So I say all this to say legislation is really, I think it's beyond Collier County. This is a state level, if not even federal, to make a significant impact on what we have going on. Any questions?
In terms of enforcing the existing laws, I know you've been out there issuing tickets. Is this a manpower issue? I understand that there's a legal issue here in terms of catching the right folks for the right violation, but is there a manpower issue that would help?
Well, as you've said initially, the sheriff takes this very seriously, and I ran the numbers. I got with the state and I found the numbers. Collier County leads South Florida in enforcement of 316-293. In so much, the closest agency to us is Miami-Dade Police, and we have them by almost 200 enforcement actions. So we're taking it very seriously. As far as what can be done, I continue to educate all of the sheriff's office through our roll call memorandums, letting people know, letting deputies know the severity that this has grown to, how to enforce it, things like that.
Mr. Chairman, I think what I would like to, are there any other speakers?
We have some public comment. Mr. Miller, we still have public comment?
Yes, sir.
And then Commissioner McDaniel's lit up here. Why don't we go to public comment, just
All
in
right,
case
sir.
that changes
Bob
anybody's
Bernardi?
questions, and then
And he'll be followed by, I'm going to do my best to read this, Paul, is it Schwinghammer?
morning, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for taking up this topic, and Mary for stealing all of my comments. Maybe I could focus it a little bit. I live at 600 Fifth Avenue South, right in downtown Old Naples. in between all the stores and shops. And I have a 30-foot balcony that overlooks Fifth Avenue. So I live this every day and also go down to 3rd Street South District. And I'll tell you, over the last couple of years, it's become out of control. And it's, as earlier said, it's cars, it's pickup trucks, it's motorcycles. Some of the motorcycles have straight pipes. They don't even have mufflers. So it's a real problem. We're talking about 15 to 20 that I hear noises, severe noises per day, more on weekends. So we bill ourselves as paradise, the place to come and enjoy yourself. This is far from paradise. And these are people, terrible to generalize, but I see them coming west on 5th. They don't stop at any restaurants or stores. They're not pulling into parking spots. They seem to go down to 3rd Street South because 10 minutes later, they're coming east on 5th. So they want to see and be seen, and they're making all of this noise to help people focus on them. So it's a real problem. There are a lot of different cars, trucks, motorcycles that do this, but there are a series that are absolute regulars, sometimes twice per day. So there's probably all kind of strategies that I'm sure the officers know about to have a team come out just like they do in speed traps. If we can give some of these regulars tickets and send the message, that may help. We have a couple of officers on 5th Avenue South that focus on 5th Avenue, and they're doing a really good job for loud music, which is an ordinance, and for the mufflers. But there's 2 guys, and this is probably happening 14 hours a day, every day of the week. So they can't be in a situation where they can help enforce this. So 2 sides of the coin. One is the recognition of the issue, and number 2 is the enforcement actions. And it's been said, it's not only ticketing the cars, but it's not only going to full-size dealerships, it's going to these little modification shops that are doing the work and making sure they understand it and what their legal liability is. But it is an issue, and we would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, your final registered public speaker on this item is Paul Schwinghammer.
Good morning. My name is Paul Schwinghammer. We live at 4050 7th Avenue Southwest. As a point of reference, if you know what the Golden Gates VFW is, we're about 100 yards north of that and about 100 yards west of 951. We purchased this home about 18 months ago, my wife and I, and quickly noticed that the noise was pretty constant and steady, really at all hours. And it wasn't long before we realized we could not sleep at night unless we had a white noise machine or a fan running because the noise was constant, particularly after the hours of 10 p.m. And we understand, and I understand coming from a construction background, that trucks, triaxle trucks, et cetera, they make noise. You can't get around that. The diesels, semis that go by that intersection are frequent and constant, particularly in the daytime working hours. But the biggest problem is the modified mufflers of the sports cars, of the motorcycles, et cetera, particularly when they're leaving the intersection of Pine Ridge and Collier. For us, it's when they're heading north on 951 from that intersection when the light turns green. It basically turns into a drag strip. People punch on their accelerators, and man, you can hear it. You're sitting out on your lanai, and you're embarrassed, frankly, when we have friends and family over visiting to have to explain, wow, what's that noise, they will ask. And we're like, yeah, we have to put up with that pretty much all the time because of the amount of traffic and the fact that so many of these vehicles are modified to make this noise. And I can attest to the sheriff stating about the manufacturer's modification on the mufflers. I'm actually looking at purchasing a Corvette, and one of the options is a performance exhaust, which actually does nothing really more than gives you about 5 more horsepower and just makes noise. So as that gentleman said on 5th Avenue, so people will notice you. I'm not opting for that option if I decide to purchase that car, by the way. So I just wanted to state that I agree with everything. I certainly appreciate everything Mary does with Quiet Florida because she is a very diligent advocate for everyone's benefit in Naples to try and keep the noise down for all the for the reasons that she mentioned. Thank you.
Commissioner or did you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Commissioner McDaniel, and then Commissioner Hall, you're on deck.
If Commissioner Saunders wants to go first.
No, I want to hear from the commissioners. The purpose, the reason I'm bringing this forward is I want to give staff some direction if there is a recognition by the board that there is a problem that we need to address. So I want to hear from all of you in terms of what your thoughts are on this.
Well, and you know, in that light, the recognition of the issue is real. I mean, there's no argument that there's an enhanced noise factor that's coming along with these modifications that are in fact happening. How we manage it's the key to success. And Lieutenant, if you could come back, I have a question for you, if you would please. You in the beginning of your presentation talked about the noise ordinance that you're currently operating under. Have you or the sheriff's legal counsel made recommendations to adjust that to make your life better? Because you know that's our goal, is to make your life better.
Right. I actually participated in the OPAGA study that Commissioner Saunders mentioned. I gave them my recommendations as far as what would make it better for us. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't have the magic bullet for that. It's a very complicated issue that.
There's no argument that it's a complicated issue, but I understood you to say that you're trying to operate under, you have a local noise ordinance, and then the statute that governs your actions as to how you get through that. Did I misunderstand what you said?
We are only operating off of state statute.
Okay, then I did misunderstand it, because I was under the impression there was a local noise ordinance that was prohibitive for your actions.
It won't, the local noise ordinance won't affect vehicular traffic.
Okay. Well, maybe we could make some adjustments to that as a beginning of the effort to help with the enforcement. The bottom line here, in my perception, is enforcement's the key to success. Well, the beginning is education. Education is key to success. If we can transition away from the modification of the mufflers and better educate the population. I know that there was enhancements to the statute with regard to the penalties that come along with the modification. That's certainly an incentive that will help people comply with the noise statutes that are in fact there. I guess my question then comes over to staff from an educational standpoint. Are you aware, Ms. Patterson, of anything what are we doing from a educational standpoint to try to help our sheriff?
I'm going to look to the back at Trinity Transportation to see if she wants to come up and answer some questions.
Okay.
She doesn't look too enthusiastic about that.
No, she really wasn't.
Somebody check her vehicle. She might have a modified muffler. She's freaking out right now.
Excuse me, just one quick statement that I want to make,
Yes,
if
sir.
I may, and that's, I have had experience with Jake brakes on dump trucks. In my other life, I used to be in the mining and excavating business, and we had enormous success with the utilization of the Jake brakes just from an educational standpoint by going to the mining operations that for the folks that are, and we're about, by the way, if you haven't seen our agenda today, we're about to have a lot more dump trucks coming into our community, especially downtown Naples and such, with the beach renourishment project that we have commencing immediately. So education with regard to the utilization of those Jake brakes. We know it's a key component of operating a 70,000-pound dump truck, but at the same time, not utilizing the Jake brake can be a huge benefit. So just as from a educational component, that's maybe get that out from a messaging standpoint. Trinity?
Thank you. For the record, Trinity Scott, Department Head Transportation Management Services, and I just bought a hybrid over the weekend, so it's really quiet. Not by choice. I had to turn the old diesel in. Anyhow, sorry, I digress. At this time, I'm unaware of any targeted education that the county is doing, but certainly if that's direction from the board, we can work together collectively with all of our departments and our communication staff and come up with a strategy.
Okay, good. Short of the educational aspect of this, I want to see, because when I met with Miss Mary last week, we talked about a pilot program that's currently going on over in Miami, and I want to see the data from that before we make any moves with regard to these noise cameras. I want to ensure that we don't go down the same path that we did before with the traffic light cameras that were an absolute debacle. Now, I also know that technology and advancements in technology have certainly been enhanced, and privacy can be better maintained, but I really want to see the results of that pilot program that's currently transpiring in Miami before we make a move on anything ourselves.
Commissioner Hall and then Commissioner Cole, you're on deck.
I will definitely agree that the noise is an issue. I live right on Trail Boulevard, right on 41, and it's a racetrack. And it's always been that way, but it's worse now. And I know that it's worse because I can also hear them when they turn on Pine Ridge and go east. It's that pop, 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 pop. They're backfiring mufflers. So, and I know that that's illegal. So to the lieutenant, you said that we lead in enforcement in South Florida.
Yes, sir.
So since it's not like we're not doing a good job with the enforcement, makes me think maybe the penalty's not great enough.
The legislation actually, so the law that we're charging them under is a moving violation, which is normally a $113 ticket. The legislation, I believe in 21, passed an enhancement for that specific statute that increases it by $200 on the first offense. So the first ticket is $313, and anything subsequent after that is $613. So we are seeing repeat offenders. It'll get expensive for them.
Yeah, well, that's my thought. If it stings the first time a lot, then maybe the word would get around. Would the noise cameras, you also mentioned that it's an issue enforcing because of discretionary, like the decibel levels. Would the noise cameras help eliminate that discretionary challenge on enforcement?
Honestly, sir, I don't know enough about the noise cameras to make an informed decision on that.
Okay. And then education-wise, maybe a slogan could be, let's be loud and clear. Noise will cost you money. That's all.
Commissioner Cole and then Commissioner Saunders.
How you doing, Lieutenant?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good. I agree with Commissioner McDaniels. It's definitely a problem. I hear it myself. I live at the corner of the Parkway. McDaniel. Always put the S on it. Sorry.
Nice job.
But Parkway and Airport. So I feel it myself. Certain nights I sit outside and I can hear it. It sounds like it's going through my backyard. But also knowing my background, and I know how challenging it is, and I know what we went through with the red light cameras, and identifying the driver was impossible, and we ran into a constitutionality and the enforcement of that, and that's why I think we don't have them anymore, because of the fact that to civilly charge somebody with a citation, a moving violation, you have to be able to identify the driver in court as the body that's acting under the color of law and citing that person. I don't know enough about these noise cameras either. I know that Miami is doing the study, but from what I understand, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but they are not enforcing it. They are not actually citing.
They are not. They are not enforcing it. They're not issuing citations through the noise cameras that I'm aware of.
Okay, so they're just in a basically study mode and collecting data.
Correct.
So, I think the one statute that's already on the books may work with the noise cameras, the one where it goes after the owner of the vehicle with the altered muffler. but the other one we're operating would probably not, because it would fall under the same area as the red light. So I think this is something we have to go after. Now, I don't know if the noise study, Commissioner Saunders, maybe you can, or let me know, that was that overdone a long period of time, certain times a day, or was this something that when we went out and did the study itself on these areas, or when you went out and assessed it? I guess that's the question I should ask.
We really haven't assessed it yet.
Oh, okay. So would it behoove us to maybe have somebody, an independent organization, go out and through certain times of the day or over time to actually monitor this with equipment that can monitor decibels of the sound and say, all right, we know exactly at this point to this point on these days that we are having a heavier amount of it. And then you with the sheriff, I can't put words in you and your sheriff's mouths, but utilize maybe YRD with the educational part of it, then move on to using YRD on weekends. If weekends are the heavy time when they're off, get some task force out there during those times. So we have an exact plan. When we attack something, you want to have a plan when you attack it. That's kind of my idea. So if we want to fix the problem, but we can't fix the problem if we don't know the exact problem we're fixing.
What's YRD?
I'm sorry, Youth Relations Deputies. That's the largest unit in the Sheriff's Department. And they have the most manpower. And they don't work in the summer. Well, they do work, but they're off. And they don't work on weekends. So this may be something that we could utilize, the sheriff for manpower to help enforce it when we identify the times, the dates, areas. Because you just go out blindly, it's fishing. So I think we need more information to have an actual plan that will work and have some results. So these are just some ideas I'm throwing out there, but I'd love to have feedback on all that before we just say this is what we're going to do. Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you that we need more information before we make any decisions, and that's the reason I brought this forward, was to start to generate that information. And so I'd like to suggest a couple things. First of all, I think we do need to have staff evaluate these noise cameras, to meet with the folks in Dade County and other communities that have them, and just find out how they work and report back to us on the cost of those, how they work, what type of enforcement issues there are, because there are some communities where I'm sure that they must be enforcing those cameras at this point. And of course, Dade County is not, but just to generate information from the manufacturer, from other communities that are using these cameras, so we have an understanding of how effective they are and what type of community reaction there's been to them. I know on the red light cameras, we had a tremendous community reaction to it. I wasn't on the board at the time, so I don't feel responsible for it, but I know that the community really reacted to it. Well, it'd be interesting to see how other communities are reacting to those as well. I'd like to make that as a recommendation in terms of having staff fully evaluate these and report back to us during our budgeting process over the next couple of months. Also, I'd like to have staff work with Mary Tadigan and her group on what type of education might be effective in terms of getting information into the schools, into these shops where these modifications are taking place. Come back to us with some recommendations on how we might help educate the businesses that are modifying these mufflers and doing these things that are illegal. To let them know that it's an issue that we're serious about. And I'd also like to recommend that, I know, Lieutenant, you said that you had some recommendations to the OPAGA group that's doing the study. I'd like to see what those recommendations are, because perhaps we need to get those to Senator Pasadomo to see perhaps if she could do something with those this legislative session. So there may be some issues there. And as part of that, I'd like to suggest that we have our lobbyist involved in this. If we have some recommendations for our legislative delegation, we need to have our lobbyist help us in getting that word out. So I'd like to make those recommendations. No decision today, just directing staff to do those things that I've just outlined, if the board's willing to move forward with that.
Commissioner Colwell and then Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you, Chairman. Something popped in my head and I just thought about it, but we were talking about the citations itself and the progressive citation if it's a repeat offender. And if I remember correctly, we used to have the old 316, 610, the fix-it ticket. And you probably remember, like I remember, we had the incident at Sugden Park where there was two teenage, a male and female, that were sitting in a car and they were overcome by carbon monoxide poisoning because the gentleman had the muffler altered. And it was pretty sad for the family, and just being an unsafe equipment vehicle. If this would be something maybe in the future we could look at and accompany the 316, 610 with the initial citation of operating with the altered muffler, then that forces them to fix it. They have so many days to fix it and bring it back to the sheriff's department and show them that it's been fixed. If that ticket's cited, because when Florida took away the inspection system here in the state of Florida, they created 316 just for that reason, for deputies and police officers to enforce unsafe equipment. So that may be another angle to accompany the regular ticket when they get cited for the altered muffler, cite them with the unsafe equipment, and that forces them to fix the unsafe equipment. So, I mean, hopefully the judges in town will look at it the same way I look at it, but I think that might force them to fix it instead of having repeat offenders, so.
I like it.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, thank you. And on the note that Commissioner Kowal talked about earlier with data collection, and I'm not a huge advocate of studies, but maybe if two things from an educational standpoint, the community that's impacted, all of us. Well, I'm not impacted. I live in nowhere, so yet I'm not impacted yet, but if we can direct our 311 calls to a particular database, if the sheriff can go through and assimilate the current complaints that have transpired, identifying hotspots. We've had several people come and speak to us about particular areas that are worse than others. And with that comes, I know we've had effective enforcement on other circumstances when I get specificity on timing, because we're limited on manpower. That's the rationale behind the cameras, is the noise cameras, is that you don't have to stand there and go fishing all day long. So maybe if we had an assimilation of the complaints and an aggregation with regard to the timing that it's transpiring, then we could actually do some additional testing in those hotspot areas to better help direct enforcement and be more effective with the enforcement. That's, with regard to your point, Miss Mary shared a story about one young fella who had, I think he was on his second ticket, so he was pushing the $600 button for his ticket, and the judge offered him 10 days to go fix and replace his muffler back to stock, and in lieu of paying the $600 fine, go fix your muffler, bring it back, and then they let him out of the fine, which was an incentivization, which I'm really in favor of, as opposed to additional regulation. So that's already necessarily happening with the enhancement to the penalties that are coming from the violation. It's already necessarily worked into the court system.
I was just going to make a comment before I think we'll have Commissioner.
Can I get his response to
Absolutely.
the aggregation of the data?
Yes, sir. Let me respond to the what you were talking about as far as the letting them fix the violation. I know personally that I do that as well. When I cite one of these drivers, I tell them, I said, if you can fix this within 30 days, my name is at the bottom of the ticket. If you make contact with me and I inspect your car, I will dismiss it. It won't even go to court. And I know one of the sergeants that works for me is also doing that. Most everybody in the traffic bureau is taking that approach. As far as the aggregation of the data, we do have what we have found by looking at it so far is our biggest. I mean, it's no real it's no real epiphany that our noisiest times are going to be our commute times. So we see it in the morning, during the lunch hour, and in the evening, mostly on your major corridors. The thing about a modified exhaust versus an aggressive driver or a DUI it can happen on any road at any time. Certain, it's not specific to the roadway where, aggressive speeds are there. Speed bumps and roundabouts slow cars down. The car's still going to be loud in those. So.
I was just going to make a comment, and then I'm sure Commissioner Saunders wants to either sum it up or add something. One thing to add, I had 2 town hall meetings last week, and actually this came up. But one of the things that I tend to get, and even in emails, is citizens who say, I was having dinner on Fifth Avenue 4 days ago, and somebody was racing down Fifth Avenue with a really loud muffler. You guys need to do something about it. Just as a side note to citizens, sometimes, most of the time, we either have a City of Naples police officer on one side street who can respond in 30 seconds, or if the call is made somewhere else within Collier County, sheriffs are out and about. If their call goes off and it's at a cross street and they're 10 seconds away, they can often sometimes catch the culprit. But sending any of us up here an email 5 days later saying, oh my God, we hear all this noise, and then my reply is, so did you report it? So number one, we can get the data, because some of the data you might bring back to us might be a little thin, because we've got a large percentage of people that are venting about it, and it has merit, no question. But if they don't report it, then the issue might not seem as big, or we might be focused on the wrong community, because the issue might be in another community that's just not picking up the phone. But I just encourage people, call the non-emergent number, call 311, and that's not going to fix everything. But I'm flabbergasted a lot of times when I do hear complaints, and I say, so when you called it, did you get a professional response? And I didn't report it. It was just we're all upset about it, and I wish you guys would do something. And the reporting does help, because often there is a police officer or a sheriff close by that can respond. But Commissioner Saunders?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move the ball a little bit here today. So I'm going to make a couple of motions and just see if there's any appetite of the commission to explore this more fully, and to really dig into it and get more facts. So with your permission, Mr. Chairman, a couple of motions. I'd like to make a motion that our staff evaluate noise cameras just as a fact-finding issue. That would involve contact with the manufacturer, that would involve contact with Miami Beach or Miami and other communities where these cameras are being used, just so we know what we're talking about. Because right now, all we know is there are cameras out there that do something, and I'd like to know more about them. And I think it would be an important message to send to the public that we're willing to look at these different possible solutions. We may not adopt those. I'm not suggesting that moving forward is implementing them, but it's just evaluating them. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like for our staff to evaluate those. I would also like our staff to work with the Sheriff's Department and Mary Tadigan's group on what type of education would be important in terms of getting information into the schools and information to the manufacturers, and as well, not the manufacturers, but the folks that are modifying these mufflers in their shops. And so I'd also like, as part of that we get the recommendations from Lieutenant Bruning in terms of what he's suggested to the OPAGA group, so at least we know what that information is, with the potential of directing our lobbyists to work on that. Now, I can break this down into separate motions if necessary, but
Second.
Yeah, I think that's great. We got a motion. We have a quick second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
we have a budget cycle coming up, Mr. Chairman, so this is something that should be fairly expeditious on the part of our staff, so we can perhaps get more resources into our Sheriff's Department if that's part of the recommendations. So thank you. I appreciate the board's consideration of this.
Now, I'll just confirm, so sometimes we're misquoted up here. This is exploratory in nature, so the front page shouldn't say we're putting noise cameras at every intersection or, you know, and we unanimously gave guidance, but there's a lot to look into. We want to do this right. You know, it's the old measure twice, cut once. So, Lieutenant, thank you for coming. And Mary, as always, thank you for the information. And, you know, we'll move forward and see what's realistic and what can help our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. What do you think, Ms. Patterson? Should we dive into the next one? It'll probably go longer than our break, or is there some quick business we can jump around and knock out anything quick that you see?
I think we can move on to.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Item 10C is a recommendation to hear a presentation by Gulf Coast Junior Gold Tour, Inc., doing business as the First Tee of Naples Collier, on the construction and operation of First Tee Naples Collier Learning Center on a portion of the Golden Gate Golf Course property. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman and members, the reason I asked this to be presented today, we're at the very close position of getting some of our projects at the Golden Gate Golf Course finalized and started. And I wanted the board to be aware of how significant this overall project at the Golden Gate Golf Course will be for, not just for the Golden Gate community. It'll be important for that community, but it'll be important for the entire county, especially our youth. And so I wanted Ms. Darling to show a video on what their plans are and how well they're doing in terms of their fundraising and what this really means for the community as we go forward on this. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
yes, sir.
Have the video.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to give you an update on our Learning Center. We are, before we start, like Commissioner Saunders said, we will show a quick video on our progress as well as some of the children we reach through our First Tee program.
The future of the First Tee Naples Collier is almost here. Now, for the first time, First Tee Naples Collier will have a home base. This new learning center will be part of a larger public golf venue, which will include a Big Shots driving range facility and a 12-hole Nicklaus designed golf course. This Golden Gate campus will allow us to expand our reach to more children in Golden Gate, Manatee, East Naples, and beyond. Inside the First Tee Learning Center will be the most advanced interactive technology and learning facilities, which will inspire our youth to stay in the program through high school. Our new home will provide the foundation that will enable kids to build strong character and develop core values as they learn the game of golf. The center will also provide a safe place for our youth to gather and office space for our dedicated First Tee staff to manage the 1,000 plus participants and 30 Collier County in-school programs. The First Tee Learning Center will strive to teach and challenge the children of Collier County to be the best they can be, on and off the course. Join us in celebrating our future by partnering with us as we continue to build game changers in our community.
First Tee is an organization that focuses on teaching kids and youth life skills through the game of golf.
The First Tee, really has built me up as an individual. It's taught me a lot about how to present myself in front of others. It gives me the confidence to know that, at the end of the day, I can do anything that I put my mind to.
What I've learned the most is probably patience and acceptance. Patience being golf is each shot at a time, and I just have to focus on my mind on each shot. And acceptance being I make some mistakes, I make some bad shots. I just have to move on and try not to dwell on it.
Golf is such a bonding sport. It allows for the parent either to come and watch the student play, drop them off, the student hits a good shot, the parent's watching, Mom, look, did you see? So the kid loves when the parents are able to see them succeed.
Just to see them go out there and where they started, they couldn't even hit the ball to where they ended. And having those opportunities to go out and say, we're gonna go to the driving range. It just changes everything.
It's made a major impact on our family to not only participate in the program, but Julian and my daughter Amelia were able to be standard bearers at the QBE shootout, which is huge memory. And also the fact that they're able to give back to the community.
There is a $10,000 scholarship for 4 years. I've been honored to get one of those last year. Now I don't have to worry about being able to pay off my school or to be in debt. I am the first one in my family to go to college in the United States. When they first called me, I started crying. And it felt like a weight off my shoulders that made me feel like I can do this.
It's a cyclical thing that we want to build. We teach, and we also want them to one day be able to come back and give back to the community. It's just been a tremendous partnership that has really brought the game of golf to the Immokalee community.
I'm thankful for the first tee teaching me that I could be whoever I want to be.
I'm thankful for the first tee for inspiring me and to ultimately keep me moving forward.
Thank you for having a positive impact on my life.
It's been a blessing being part of the first tee here at Naples Collier.
Thank you very much. As you can see, we reach several positive kids all throughout Collier County. We are excited to be part of the cornerstone in the Collier County Golf Center that is being built at Golden Gate Parkway and 951, where families, young and old, can gather in a positive atmosphere to learn the game of golf, to learn our life skills through first tee, and to have positive influence and friendships throughout their life. So it's very meaningful. Our Learning Center will be a flagship for the first tee across the United States. Currently in Collier County, we reach 1,000 young people each year in our life skills programming. Once the doors open at our new facility, we anticipate doubling that size. And the reason being is there is a great need for after-school programming in Collier County, especially in the Golden Gate area. And we feel and we know that the first tee will fill that niche with our Learning Center, where kids can come after school in a positive, safe environment with mentors and trained coach to greet and meet them every afternoon and on the weekends. We have had the opportunity over the past few months to meet parents, children, businessmen, businesswomen, retirees, people in the PARS community, which is around the golf course, and everyone is ready to go. We are excited to put the shovels in the ground. It's a public facility where this community needs for our families to gather. We are ready to go. The first tee is ready. We have raised over $5 million in our $10 million campaign, and we are confident that once the shovels are in the ground, the funds will come, and we will make it a spectacular place for families to attend first tee. There's nothing like it in Collier County, and we should all be very proud of it. Where families can go, they can drop their kids off at first tee, or we can bus them into first tee, and afterwards they can go over to Big Shots and have dinner, or they can go and play another 6 holes of golf with mentors or some of our coaches. It's a good thing, and the county is behind us. They're behind you, and we want to see this done. And what a better gift to give to our community and our young people than a place like Collier County. I'm calling it the Golf Center. And what a great gift to give them that is lasting for, many years to come. So we are excited, to say the least, and if there's anything we can do on our part to get this going, we're here to help. And I'm open for questions if you have any questions.
No, I don't have any questions. I wanted to bring this item forward. As I said, we're very close to getting all of these projects underway, the Veterans Nursing Home, the golf course, this facility, the workforce housing project. There are several projects out there that we're really on the cusp of, and I wanted the board to understand and see firsthand how important this is to the overall community. So this is a good news, for me, this is a good news story that I just wanted to share with the board. I'm not asking for any action on the part of the board, just to let you know we're moving forward.
Thank you. It's a good news story for us as well. So
And you said, let's get this going. It's going. It's already going.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Patterson.
Item 10D is a request that the board prohibit any connection of this is the correction for the record, Autumn Oak Lane, Hidden Oaks Lane, Spanish Oaks Lane, Golden Oaks Lane, Standing Oaks Lane, Shady Oaks Lane, Burr Oaks Lane, and English Oaks Lane to Logan Boulevard. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, that community has been under the impression for probably 15 or 20 years that these roads would not be connected to Logan Boulevard. I searched the records. There is nothing official in our records that says that. So their concern is that at any point in time, the commission could change its mind and connect up Oaks Boulevard to Logan Boulevard, which would create a massive problem in that community. And so I advised their board of directors that I would bring before the board a request for a resolution that specifically says that there is no intent on the part of the board to connect these roads to Logan Boulevard. Now, obviously, a future commission can undo that, but it's more difficult to undo something like this than it is to make the decision in the first place. So this is just to give comfort to that neighborhood that it is not the intention of the board to connect those roads to Logan. That's a community that we're looking to protect. So the motion would be for the board to adopt a resolution basically saying what this says, so that there'll be something on the official records to give that community some comfort.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Anybody have any questions or anything for the staff? Okay, I just want one clarification. So what you were saying, Commissioner Saunders, is the citizens on all these roads were under the false impression that these all roads were going to be connected, but it was never the county's intention to connect them, correct?
It's really not just the residents on those roads, it's the entire Oaks community, because
Right.
this would have connecting any of those roads to Logan would have a significant impact on Oaks Boulevard. And so it's the entire community, it's not just those roads.
Yeah.
And it's, as I said, it's never been the intent of the prior boards to connect those roads to Logan, but we have that potential, and I just want to go on record indicating that at least this board certainly has no intention of doing that. It'll be more difficult, as I said, it'll be more difficult for a future board to take this resolution and rescind it than it would be to just connect the road in the first place. So that's the purpose of this, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, just as a point of discussion, I'd like to take, I'm totally in support of the motion. But I also, when we had the elder care facility built on the north end, which used to be 24th, there were specific direction from this board with regard to limiting the left-hand turn. So somebody make sure that that's in fact transpiring as well, because the neighborhood reached out expressing a concern about the increase of traffic on Oaks. And so I just, as a footnote on this item, just if you would get back to me at some stage, Trinity.
Mr. Miller, we have any public comment or anything? Okay, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. I'm sorry? You oppose? Okay, you want to make any comments or?
Yeah, just, the reason I oppose it is just because these are public roads. These are roads that are maintained by the tax dollars and the tax-paying public. So I just don't know if, there was never any intention to connect them, but to create a resolution to make it harder for a future commission to do it if it's something that's necessary to betterment the tax-paying public to connect the roads, that, we're almost privatizing roads that we're using tax dollars to maintain. So, and that's just kind of my position on it, so.
I think that has merit. Anybody want to make? And the reason I was asking for the clarification is because, not that I have a lot of depth of knowledge on the history of these neighborhoods, but I was just a little bit concerned about precedents, because we do widen roads, we lengthen roads, and don't want to give the false impression to different neighborhoods that, hey, if you come in here with 1,000 people all wearing matching T-shirts, or you get, to your commissioner, you can, a lot of times these roads are made wider to connect different areas because it does help with traffic. I'm not saying that's the example here. This might be a totally different example. It sounds like it might be. But, my concern was it's not, like you said, necessarily, an immediate option because somebody's worried about noise, which we just talked about, or traffic, that at times connecting the roads is what makes the community more connectable, more easily traversed. So I think what you say. I don't think disagree with it. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, and I don't agree. I don't disagree either. I mean, there's certainly rationale, but on the same token, those of us who have represented the Golden Gate Estates area, virtually all of those streets are cul-de-sac streets. And I remember in transportation folks, engineers especially, I won't throw anybody under the bus, but they have a different perspective on ease of move about and so on and so forth. I remember when Vanderbilt was being finalized, there was a move to open up 5 or 6 streets in Golden Gate Estates, rural, east of 951, and allow for cross access through those cul-de-sac streets. So, and then we, the board, chose to not do that and made some amendments to Vanderbilt as well. So, but I mean, you're not. I agree with what it is you're saying, that they are public roads, but on the other side, they are not built wide enough. They don't have they barely have traversability for the neighborhood that's actually utilizing them to get to their homes, and they weren't. It wasn't really contemplated for them to be connection routes throughout to different corridors. That's why I'm supporting the motion.
Do we have any? I don't want to beat a dead horse here, and I don't have the like I said, the depth of knowing that all these are cul-de-sacs or what have you. But from our traffic experts, is there any pushback or concern? I mean, if Tony was here, and or Trinity, and here she comes, it would make me feel a lot better saying that. No, you're exactly right. These should have never been connected, because sometimes they have a little bit of a different perspective. But, and like I said, I'm not trying to be Scrooge or anything here, but I just like a little bit more education. Ma'am?
Once again, for the record, Trinity Scott, Department Head, Transportation Management Services. I thought I was going to be able to sit back there quiet all day. Certainly, from a transportation perspective, we support all interconnections. But they have to be done in a manner where we typically, if we're interconnecting, we want to look at the roadway that we're connecting to, what type of other improvements would be necessary. I haven't been out on these specific roadways in a while, but typical Golden Gate Estates roadways are very narrow roadways without sidewalks, et cetera. So certainly putting any type of connection in and encouraging an abundance of traffic, we would want to look at that. Commissioner Saunders and I spoke about this. There's been a long-standing history with the Oaks community, if you will, and quite frankly, I thought that there was something in board policy where the roadways would not be connected. I searched the record, as did Commissioner Saunders and his staff. So, as I said, from a transportation perspective, from when you put the engineering hat on, we certainly appreciate and value interconnections in the proper place. At this time, we have no plans to connect those roadways.
Okay. And these would be bad examples of roads that would welcome a connection. Obviously, the citizens don't, but to Commissioner McDaniel's point, and what I'm hearing you say, you can't just arbitrarily connect roads. I mean, you can't connect a interstate to a one-lane road. It's not a smart move. Are these examples of those type of cul-de-sac 1 or 2 lane roads where the connection wouldn't even make sense? And I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have that knowledge. I certainly don't.
Yeah, they're very narrow roadways that were built in a time when pavement widths were not what they are today. They're not similar to a brand new road that I would build today as far as lane widths, et cetera. So prior to even proposing to make any type of connection, we would come to the board and say, we need to look at that road. And I'm going to use Massey Street as an example, Vanderbilt Beach Road extension.
You're going to go to Massey?
Well, we connected that roadway. We proposed making connections to that roadway. Very similar roadway, very narrow. We're investing a significant amount of money to improve that roadway to make sure that it can be viable for an interconnection. So that would be what we would be looking at in the future should we want to come before the board to make an interconnection.
Okay, and there's always that option, but I have a question, I guess, for Commissioner Saunders. The reason you're making this motion is really to alleviate confusion in the citizens' mind and to give them peace of mind that at least now going forward, and there's always something that could change. And like you say, if there was some big major reversal, and I don't necessarily agree, I know exactly what you're saying, it would be difficult for, 5 different commissioners up here, but I think if the county staff came up here in X number of years and said, wow, there's been a really major change. So, the commissioners back in 2023 made a really smart decision that made sense at the time. But now we really need to approve 3 of these 6 or 7 roads like you're doing on Massey because of some changes in the community. I mean, we wouldn't have a crystal ball to know that. But it seems like for the short term, is the reason you're making this motion is to alleviate some confusion. And we know we're not doing that today or maybe in the near future. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, and this particular community was under the impression, as was Ms. Scott, that there was already something in the records to reflect that there would not be those interconnections, something going back many, many years ago. We searched the records. That was not contained in the records. And so I just wanted to clarify for that community, that was the intention before, that's the intention now. But I've also advised them that a future board, almost everything we do can be undone. That we can't bind, we often say we can't bind a future board, except for perhaps contracts and that sort of thing. But we can't bind a future board on a policy like this. But we can make it clear that this was what the intent was and what the neighborhood had understood for many, many years. This is a little bit different because you've got really just some very narrow streets that would be connected potentially to a road that has a tremendous amount of traffic on it. And that would just be the wrong thing to do to that neighborhood. So that's why I brought this. It's to clarify something that everyone understood was already there.
Commissioner McDaniel, then Commissioner Cowell.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but I served as chair of the Easton 951 Horizon Study. 2 years we went through with public input, brought in the Sheriff's Department, Fire Departments, EMS, talked about connectivity, talked about, and similar roads, by the way, that are cul-de-sac streets that weren't built for throughway traffic. And then we got a grant from the state for $10 million to build 3 bridges. So the state said, hey, we have some money and we know you want to build some bridges. We identified those roads for connection 15 years ago by the community, brought it to the Board of County Commissioners, and identified these interconnecting roads. And the consequences of the expense, they had to be widened, they had to have sidewalks, they had to have streetlights, and the county burnt the $10 million on the first bridge. And it wasn't the cost of the bridge, it was the improvements to the street that were requisite. The 2 streets on 8th was the first one that we did. And the consequences of the interconnection demanded additional swales and sidewalks and lighting and so on and so forth. So it is an impacted process, as Commissioner Saunders said, that it can be undone if in fact staff came to us, another study was done and the greater good was served, that we interconnected between Logan and Oaks. But I certainly support the motion as he's brought it forward.
Commissioner Cowell.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to be misunderstood, but I'm just, I'm looking at it a certain way, and it just almost looks like we're using government again to fix something that's not broken. I mean, I heard, over and over keep saying something that was intended not to ever happen, but the problem is if it was intended, it would have been written somewhere when initially was there. So I don't think it was ever intended not to do it because it was never written down. It might have been an assumption, but we don't work on assumption, in rumor over time. Just because somebody says it over and over again don't mean it's true. I don't know. I look at a public safety aspect of it. I don't know what's going to go on the other side of Logan someday. We don't have that crystal ball. But I think that'll come to the board in the future, and it'll be something that whoever's sitting in these seats in the dais will make that decision. So I think if it comes down to it, then when that time comes, they'll make the right decision. But like I said, I don't know if foreseeing something didn't happen yet or fixing something by using government and overreach in a way that we have no intention of doing right now or not. And you can't say that, in a public safety aspect of it, I know what it was like working in Golden Gate City, and you have to respond to an emergency call, and you're like, all right, I'm right on this street, and I know I can go down this way, and that other street's at the end of 29th Street Southwest or whatever, and you get down there's a canal. Now I got to drive 25 minutes around another way to get to somebody that needs my help. And we don't know where that deputy or that EMS or that firefighter might be at the time. And if there is a community on the other side of Logan someday, maybe that is the quickest route to go down one of these smaller streets, which in an emergency situation is not a problem. Then they would have that connectivity to get across over to Logan. So that's just my feeling in not using us to change or reinforce something that was never a fact. And I just don't think that's our use at this time. So that's just my opinion about it. So,
Ms. Patterson, let me ask you a question, because hearing Commissioner Colwell, I think his comments definitely are resonating with me. Is there a better way to word this? And I realize that the wording of 10B isn't maybe necessarily what goes into writing, but when we say request that the board prohibit any connection, it does sound so finalized. Is there a way to say, I don't know, if I knew how to say it, I would, or maybe Commissioner Saunders wants to, chime in here, but a way, and we don't want to be sort of loose about it or, not committal. But when you just say prohibit, I mean, that does make it sound like, wow, if anybody wants to overturn that, it could be, more difficult, or just the verbiage is so final. Do you have thoughts on that? And then also, Commissioner Saunders might have some thoughts on the motion on the wording.
Sure.
What's your thought?
Well, it was interesting that Commissioner McDaniel brought up the Vanderbilt Beach Road extension, because that one, the interconnection plan, came to the board with recommendations for many more interconnects than ultimately came to be. So that's an example of how we would propose to make these interconnects. Should we look to connect those streets to Logan? Staff can propose anything, but ultimately that authority lies with the board. And to Commissioner Saunders' point, anything that this board does like this could be undone by a future board, but I think it's a balance of not seeming too restrictive, but also providing that assurance to the community that's not the intent. What the exact wording is, I'll look to the county attorney if he's got any suggestions that we've done prior, but I think you're attempting to find a balance here to provide that reassurance that that's not what we're planning to do, but understand that we can't promise what a future board might do or what planning may provide in the future that everyone may feel differently about.
Yeah, I guess the point is I don't want to wordsmith this thing too much, but you sit here and when you say something like, well, it's not the intent, that's not as hard over as saying prohibited, that kind of thing. And so I don't know. I mean, county attorney, do you have any advice? And then Commissioner McDaniel's on deck here.
Well, ultimately, as Commissioner Saunders' item, how he wants the resolution to read, you can do it prohibit, or you can do it, is the board's current policy not to connect, but that's, Commissioner Saunders, that's really your call.
Commissioner McDaniel?
Yeah, let's leave it alone. I mean, we've already reiterated multiple times that and we all have learned that what is done by a board of county commissioners will, and oftentimes is adjusted by another board of county commissioners. And if our staff comes to us and says, hey, we've got a great big development over here on the east side of Logan Boulevard, and it would help for an emergency access, that's an entirely separate process than opening up the through traffic for ease of people to get from A to B. That's that could be done, but it would come through staff. There would be EMS, fire, sheriff, so on and so forth that would come through our staff to the board and say, hey, we want to open up one of these streets because it'll cut our response time in half. And so I'm in favor. We voted 4-1. And Commissioner Kowal's not incorrect in his perceptions, but we've already this is passed. Let's roll.
Okay. But I mean, this is healthy conversation, and this will come up again. Yeah, my only question is that the people that replace us, then if they do make a change, which they haven't, as you said, you gave some great examples. If first responders come up here in mass, you're also going to have a bunch of citizens waving what we just approved and said, but way back when they prohibited, you're not standing by your word, you have no integrity, this county is awful, you commissioners should all be thrown out, and I don't want to set our replacements up for failure. So, I agree, and maybe we're splitting hairs on this, but I really want to give Commissioner Saunders the last word here.
Well, and I have no problem in having a revote, because I think there was some conversation that took place. So if any commissioners want to change their vote, that I don't have any issues with that at all. But I'd like to leave the language the way it is, just because it sends a strong message, and I think that's what that community had expected, and it can, as we've all said, it can be changed. But if anybody wants to change their vote,
Okay.
we can revote. That's
I'm a supporter for clarity. I mean, I appreciate what Commissioner McDaniel is saying. Hey, we vote, move on. But good, healthy discussion here. So for clarity, I'll just say there's a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
It passes 4-1.
I don't like prohibit.
Okay, and let's take a break now. Let's come back here at 10:55.
Mr. Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay, we will resume. Ms. Patterson, I guess we'll head over to 10E.
Yes, sir. Item 10E is a request that the board prohibit any connection of Rock Road to the future Vanderbilt Beach Road extension. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
And this is almost like deja vu all over again. Rock Road's a little bit different, and Ms. Scott has some information for this. But this is a request of this folks resident on Rock Road, just to clarify that Rock Road's not going to be connected to Vanderbilt Beach Road, but there's some other circumstances that make this a little bit easier.
Okay.
Good morning. Once again, Trinity Scott, Transportation Management Services Department Head. Yes, we've been approached by some citizens along Rock Road. As you know, we are currently under construction with Vanderbilt Beach Road extension. Rock Road does not come adjacent to the roadway. It would actually have to go through, if the county wished to connect the roadway, which not identified in your long-range transportation plan at all. It would have to go through a single-family home, a well site, as well as a school property. So the residents, it's just been something that's been coming up pretty much since we let the contract for Vanderbilt Beach Road extension about, does the county have any intention of connecting this roadway? It's not identified on any plan.
Okay, and by what you just said, this is one that literally there's a lot of stuff in the way, right? So
Yes, sir.
It wouldn't make sense. Okay.
And this is just to give some comfort to the neighbors that have been very concerned about it as the construction goes on. So it's basically the same thing, just that we're not going to connect Rock Road to Vanderbilt Beach Road. If a future commission decides to do that, that's an option, but we're committed to not doing that.
Do you want a resolution on this as well, sir?
Yes, sir. That would be, just so there'd be something of a record of that. So I'll make that motion. I know there may be some discussion about it, but I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, passes 4-1. Okay, let's move to 10F.
10F is a recommendation to hear a presentation by Tom Kep and Domestic Animal Services volunteers on hobby breeders, and consider providing staff direction to schedule a future board workshop on hobby breeders in Collier County. This item is brought to the agenda by Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I brought this forward because there's been hanging out there a request for a continuation of a workshop for a number of years now on the issue of hobby breeders. I'm not suggesting that we should have a workshop, but I do think that the board should at least make a decision as to whether we're going to have one. Listen to the folks that want to have a workshop on this. But also, significantly, is our staff is going to provide you a little bit of information about the successes there at DAS and what their needs are going forward. And one of the issues was, do we need to make any amendments to the existing ordinances? And I think the county attorney will have some opinion on that. But I just wanted to give the folks that wanted to have a workshop an opportunity to hear this issue, let us make a decision on that, and also hear what the DAS will need going forward.
Okay. Mr. Kemp, floor is yours.
For the commissioners that are new on here, my name's Tom Kep. I live at 6491 Sable Ridge Lane. I was born here in 1950, so I've been in Collier County for all my life. I got involved in the animal issues 20 years ago. I've been in front of the commission since probably 2002 on different cases. I started going out to like Bayshore Drive, Holly Avenue, and I was on the Humane Society board for about 8 years. Then I was on the original advisory board for DAS, and I was probably on that about 7 years. I saw the problems. I started going to Bayshore, taking dogs, getting them spayed and neutered, pay for it myself. In 2013, I started Tom Kep Spay and Neuter. I would go to Immokalee. I made a deal with Cape Coral, Gulf Coast Humane Society in Fort Myers. They'd bring a bus. They'd do 15 to 30 animals every single month for me. And then in 2015, a couple of ladies talked me into doing a 501c3. We're a nonprofit, and it's called SNP Collier, Spay Neuter Initiative Program. And from 2015 till approximately 2020, we would do these, we probably did approximately 2,500 spay and neuters for dogs and probably rescued about 1,000 animals. And we had a program where we'd take puppies and moms, put them in fosters. We would spay the moms and we'd keep the puppies at the shelter, whichever shelter I could get them in. And I'd take the moms back. Most of that was done in Immokalee and off the East Trail and places like that. Since it'll be 2 years May, we started our own spay and neuter clinic right across the street over here on Davis. And we spay and neuter about 4,000 animals a year. Dogs and cats, we have a TNR program now. We've done thousands of cats and to help the population. And so that's my background. I've been in front of this board, advisory board, for many, many years. I have all the history here of these ordinances being put together in 2008, 2012, 2017. I was part of that. We have discussed this hobby breeder issue, and that's what we're here. We have no discussion on what goes on in the buildings. We'll let the staff and the volunteers deal with that kind of stuff. But these ordinances on this hobby breeder were passed, and they're actually in their hobby breeder packets that they pass out now, but it was never brought back to this commission for a vote. So, but all that being said, I've been muzzled kinda. We have a new executive director, and I want to introduce her, Jessica Orlando, and so she's going to speak. And I know some of you will be very happy about it.
I was just going to say.
Don't say it. You can say it, it's all right. Jessica, why don't you come here and speak, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
And Al back there's going to cough if I get out of line and stuff, you know?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Orlando. I'm the newly appointed Executive Director of SNP Collier. I've been on the board almost 2 years and volunteered in animal rescue pretty much since I was a little kid. I live at 298 Spider Lily Lane, which is in the Pebblebrook Lakes community, the corner of Immokalee Road and 951. And I do hear a lot of 951 noise at my house as well, so I was interested in that discussion. So I'm here today to discuss the hobby breeder workshop and the ordinances that were previously in process, but I think have lapsed. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. 90 to 95% of that work has already been completed, but we think it's really time to finalize it and enforce it. We work out in the field every day, Tom more than myself, but I do get out there, and we believe that having an enforceable hobby breeder ordinance is one of the best ways to ensure that the critical overpopulation of animals and overcrowding at shelters is addressed. So just a little bit of history. I know some of you know it. At the October 8th, 2019 meeting, Board of Commissioners meeting, Chairman McDaniel stated that it was moved and seconded that the Board of County Commissioners reach out to the advisory committee and develop an ordinance to further regulate retail sales. And he also stated that he wanted a provision of enhancement for the punishment on bad actors, and that was voted unanimously in favor. In October of 2020, there was an email passed around by Darcy Andrade, who was the former Director of Animal Services at DAS, regarding language specific to breeders that had been previously discussed. It was proposed in February of 2020, and her email notes that it would be subject to change after the workshop that was being held on Monday, October 5th, 2020. So that email included a lot of information. I have copies for you if you'd like. But it really laid out in Section 11 what it means to have animal care and what manner of keeping these breeders, hobby and commercial breeders, need to adhere to, and then a long list of regulations, including, that they have to keep all the animals, dogs and cats, until 8 weeks of age. They need a health certificate from a vet. If one of the puppies or kittens dies, they're required to take it to a licensed veterinarian, get a death certificate, and understand why that dog passed. They have to be tested, vaccinated. They must retain all that information, the health certificate, for 1 year. They must be implanted with with a microchip. They must know who they sold or gave that animal away to and keep that as part of their records for 2 years. These are all things, the license tag numbers of the parents, the name and address of the new owner, all of these things that they're required to keep under this proposed legislation. In July of 2022, in an email from the county attorney, this was again brought up, and I'm not sure if COVID, caused an issue here, if the, Darcy leaving and new management at Animal Services was the cause for the delay. But in July of 2022, the county attorney was suggesting that this workshop is the proper mechanism to ensure the change in the ordinances. And I think the previous workshop was a great start, and in anticipation of it passing, as Tom mentioned, DAS has already included a lot of those regulations in the hobby breeder packet. If you go into DAS and ask for a hobby breeder packet, it lists all of these things, but I don't think that the ordinance backs it up. I think we really need to align those and make sure that it's in the policy and procedure manual so everybody knows what they're supposed to be enforcing and how to enforce it. So I'm happy to take questions or leave you guys with some more detail on the rules and regulations that were included, but we really just want to make sure that this moves forward. I think it's a great way to move forward. As you said, enforcement is the key to success.
Any questions? Anybody have anything? Sir? Commissioner Cole.
Chairman, thank you. I just have one question. I don't know anything about this. I just was curious, what exactly is your definition of a hobby breeder? I mean, what, in your words?
And you guys, Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, or somebody from DAS, but it's less than two or less litters a year. If you're a commercial breeder, you have to be a commercial breeder if you're breeding more than that in a 12-month period.
May I speak to that for just a minute?
Sure. You probably know better.
That's the definition of it, and here's why hobby breeders are separated from commercial breeders. First of all, if you go to the county records and you say, I'd like a list of all the commercial breeders besides stores, you're only going to find a few, because you have to prove that they're selling these animals and that they're having 5 or 7 litters a year or whatever it is. There are very few. Everybody's a hobby breeder. This includes, like, and I'm best with examples. I go to a house and there's 6 puppies running around and they're 4 weeks old out in the dirt. And most people will go, oh, look how healthy they are. They got fat bellies. This is hookworm. And I've got videos of dead dogs many times that I deal with on a daily basis almost, from hookworms, and these are mainly puppies, and ringworm, things like that. So what happens is they pay $200 for a hobby breeder license, but nobody does. There's no follow up after that as far as like testing these animals. And what happens is after 4 weeks, it's easy to take care of them up to 4 weeks. But once they start crawling around, you can imagine the mess. All you do is before 4 weeks, you feed the mom and she cleans them. So what they do is start giving them away or selling them for $50 or $100. And pretty soon they're gone, and a lot of them die because they get no health care. So what we've petitioned for and asked for, that you make it 8 weeks. They have to keep them 8 weeks. They have to keep records of, well, what she said, so I won't go over that. And this is what was really, and there's a history of it, was supposed to be in 2012. It was supposed to be in the ordinances in 2017. And Darcy's exact words when I said, how come that wasn't? She goes, I forgot to put them in. So these have been talked about for 15 years that I know of. And we came up with these at a workshop, and they put them in this, but the advisory board never brought them back to this commission to have a vote on them. And that's what's happened. So that's why, if I hear all the time with the domestic animal service, how full the kennels are and we have to do this because there's so many. If you had done this 15 years ago, we'd have 25% less, and I don't know the exact numbers on that, but you'd have so many less, because I run into it daily. These people pumping out puppies and they're just giving them away or selling them for $100, and that's what needs to be corrected. And we wouldn't have the problem in our facilities now if we had done this. And we need to lead and not listen to other counties, how they do it. We need to lead here, because that's been a problem too. We use every other county's ordinances, but we have smart people in this county. And this is a taxpayer issue also. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, well, the question is for staff. Is there an outstanding ordinance that needs to come back to this board?
Hi, Commissioner. For the record, I'm Marcy Perry, your Domestic Animal Services Director. I'd like to just correct a few statements that were made. Our current ordinance has those requirements in it. Under Section 1481, which is regulations for breeders and pet shops, it clearly indicates that. Requirements: puppies, cats, dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens acquired for resale must be examined by a licensed veterinarian within 5 days of physical acquisition. Dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens offered for sale must be at least 8 weeks of age. Dogs, cats, puppies, kittens offered for sale must be accompanied by an official certificate of veterinary inspection. That's the health certificate. Then the ordinance continues to go into the definition of the health certificate and what the health certificate requires. It additionally goes into the required vaccinations for puppies, including distemper, leptospirosis, bordetella, and so on.
My question, is the ordinance as it currently, have we voted on this?
The ordinance is on the monitor. We've had this ordinance for a number of years now.
Okay.
That is
That's our current ordinance.
Okay.
Right? And my understanding is that the advisory board does not recommend any changes to this ordinance. Now, what Mr. Kemp is talking about, maybe enforcement.
Well, I'm going there. That's where I'm going now.
But that's what we have.
Okay.
Mr. Lando, let's just wait for 1 second. We're just, everybody's going to get a chance to be heard and talk.
Yeah, sure. This isn't a debate. I mean, you and I aren't arguing about this. I need to hear from our staff what prohibitions you're running into from an enforcement standpoint.
Absolutely. So we also do quarterly inspections. So it's not that they just register, get a permit, and that's the end of the breeding checks. We go out quarterly. We inspect quarterly. We get the disposition forms as well. So we are conducting those quarterly inspections on any licensed breeder. If we receive a call for service to investigate a breeder that's unlicensed, we do that investigation. The amount of calls, we ran the statistics, the amount of calls that we receive every single year to investigate breeding is just 2%. That is 2% of all the calls that we receive for calls for service.
So what are the prohibitions to enforcement of the ordinance?
I'm not sure that there is. We are enforcing our ordinance.
Let me ask you a question, and then I think Commissioner Saunders is queuing up here. So this ordinance is in place, and it was voted on. It's not in draft form, correct?
Right out of Muni Code.
Right, okay. So let's say I have a golden retriever. My neighbor has a golden retriever. We're not breeders, but boy, our dogs like to play together a lot, and we have a bunch of people that say, wow, you should get them together, and we'd love to have some puppies. And so they mate. We have a litter of 9, and we sell them all for $100 a piece. This ordinance here, I would have to follow that, because technically, right, is that a hobby breeder? I mean, somebody that just offhand, and if that's the case, how the heck would they know about this? I mean, if they're not a professional breeder, they're not doing it 5 times a year, and they just decide that 2 neighbors have a litter of puppies, and they put a box out in front of the house that says, golden retriever puppies, $100 a piece. That actually violates a whole bunch of things in this ordinance if they don't do all these things, correct?
That is correct.
So that's where you're hoping somebody would catch that as a neighbor and say, hey, you have to actually do A, B, C, D, and E, but I'm surprised. I'm not surprised it's 2%, because who the heck's going to do that? Who's going to turn in somebody like that? They're probably, because they probably don't even know there's something. Everybody welcomes it. Kids are on the street with a cute little sign, free kittens, and everybody thinks it's cute. But that's really what we're talking about here, correct? I mean, there's other examples, and Mr. Kemp and Mr. Lando will come back to the podium, obviously, and we want to hear from all sides. But there's some things going around in some other places that are more aggressive than just 2 neighbors, have 2 dogs. I mean, I think that's what we're really kind of talking about. But to my example, this ordinance still would cover that, correct?
Yes, this ordinance does cover that.
Right. Okay. Questions? Anybody else? Commissioner Saunders?
One of the things that I spoke with Ms. Perry and Ms. Williams about was what plans you have for going forward. So at some point, not necessarily right now, but at some point, I'd like to hear that. But the issue then is whether or not there's a need for a workshop, and it sounds like there is not. If I'm hearing that, would like to hear from Mr. Kep and Ms. Orlando just on that issue again, just to make sure. And if we don't need a workshop, then that's fine.
Ma'am, Ms. Orlando?
Yes, the question I would have with regards to something that's, I guess, in section 1481 is this new information from 2020 expanded to no person shall make or offer for sale, trade, delivery, barter, lease, rent, auction, giveaway, transfer. I don't know if that may be one of the relevant changes, that it's not just, puppies for $100 by the side of the road, but it's anybody that's actively having puppies and giving them away has to be covered by this. So that would be my first question, is that in there?
So we do not currently regulate when somebody decides to give away their pet. If they want to give away their dog or their horse or their cat or a puppy, they are free to do so currently. That is not a regulation that we have in our ordinance.
Okay, and they wouldn't have to follow, because what I was reading in there, if somebody wanted to give away their puppy and it was 4 weeks old, could they do it?
No, they need to keep the puppy till it's
Right, so they would, some of the things that you mentioned would still be covered. They still have to meet the minimum requirements. It's not illegal to give it away. Sounds like it's probably not illegal to sell it for $50, but they still have to meet the minimum requirements in there of, have to take it to a vet, if you found out about, a neighbor who their two dogs had puppies and somebody reported it to you anonymously or on the record, they would have to follow that ordinance that's already approved and in play, correct? What you're just saying is a lot of, you don't chase down a lot of those people because you don't have a crystal ball and a lot of it isn't reported, correct?
Correct. And if they choose to give their puppy away at 8 weeks of age, then they choose to give their puppy away. We do not regulate that.
Right. Ms. Orlando, did you have something? And then Commissioner Colwell's got a question.
Yeah, the language that I read that includes, delivery, barter, lease, rent, auction, giveaway, or transfer, came from that 2020 workshop. So that, I'd just be interested to know if that's not in the ordinance, what else from that 2020 workshop didn't make it in, because I think this is what we would be supportive of. So,
Commissioner Colwell.
This is a question for you. I think it's more or less just identifying who's abusing this more, say, than just like what Commissioner LaCosta kind of gave an example of two neighbors wanting to have a litter of puppies because, their friends like their dogs and would like to have one like it. It sounds like Mr. Kemp and them when they're out and about, they're running into more of a organized individual that's doing this to make a profit and is not obeying the rules that we already have set forth in the ordinance. So I think it sounds like everybody wants the same result here and from both sides, but it more or less sounds like identifying these particular people and having the manpower from your office to actually address them and enforce it. So I don't know that, we have an ordinance in place. It sounds like it's pretty much in line of what they wanted to have from their initial presentation. So I think it's more of us finding the problem childs and identifying them and enforcing it. So,
Mr. Kemp?
I could be wrong. I don't think so. No, thank you, Bill. Show me in the ordinances right now where it says that you can just give your puppy away at 4 weeks. This is where we're getting confused.
No, but it doesn't say that.
No. What I mean is, a commercial breeder has to keep. That's what it all says. If you sell your dogs, you have to keep them 8 weeks. Mr. LaCosta, you've been to Immokalee with me before. You've seen it, and it's not just Immokalee. It's Golden Gate Estates, Golden Gate City. Bill, that's not. I'm not talking about that would be covered under this new hobby breeder permit, but our ordinances, the ordinances for hobby breeders, it would be covered. But those aren't the people we're after. We're after the people that are just like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been out there. These are people that are just letting their animals have puppies anytime out in the dirt. If they live, they live. If they die, they die. They don't care. I deal with them every day. I've got probably 150 files at home that I can show you. And as far as these inspections go, just a little heads up. There was a dogfighting rink that was broken up in Golden Gate City a few years ago. DS had given them a hobby breeder permit 9 months before that, and they had inspected them 3 times. And if you read the report, which I have, if anybody wants to see it, they said, "Can we come in the house?" And the guy goes, "No, I ain't got time." And so they inspected it from the outside. And I guarantee you they probably had dogfighting dogs in the house. And they had inspected this place 3 different times because it's every 4 months or 3 months. So some of these inspections, and it says when you sign that hobby breeder permit, it says that you can inspect the premises, but they don't do that. They just, if it's convenient for the owner, they let them.
So let me ask you a question.
And I have that file if you want to see it.
Mr. Kemp, in the current ordinance, do you think there's something missing or verbiage that should have more meat on the bone and be more specific? And then the second part would be, regardless of what that answer is, I already think I know the answer to part 2, which is you feel like regardless of what's in the ordinance, we're not being as strong with enforcement.
Absolutely.
Right. But so let me ask you question number 1 again. Is there anything in the ordinance that you think is missing or it needs to be worded in a stronger manner? Because if we had a workshop, that's probably what we'd be kicking around here, but we're here now. So what's your thoughts?
Let me just read you what's in the packet that is already in their packet. They're the ones that put it in. I didn't. Let me just find it.
But what you're going to read me is going to be a good thing. It's going to be something you agree with, but I think you're going to just say,
That's my point.
but what you're going to say is enforcement isn't there, correct?
Exactly. Well, this hasn't even been put into our ordinances.
Okay.
This is what was basically talked about and passed, and it basically says that as a hobby breeder, what you need to do. And let me just find it, and I apologize. What do I need to be a hobby breeder? 2 litters of puppies or kittens per year.
But you're reading from something that's a Collier County ordinance or
what
directive.
What is involved in quarterly inspections? What's involved in quarterly inspections?
Okay.
And what do I need to do to provide my quarterly disposition report? On a quarterly basis, 4 times per year, the hobby breeder will be inspected by an animal control officer to verify that all standards of care are being met and to verify if any intentional litters have been produced or unintentional litters. Each quarter, the hobby breeder must provide Collier County Domestic Animal Services with a disposition report for the previous quarter to include name, address, telephone number of all new owners of any dog, puppy, cat, or kitten. You will also need to provide the animal's microchip number. If no animals were placed in the previous quarter, the hobby breeder shall submit a notice to the CCDAS that no animals will be sold or given away.
But you're reading from what? That's not the actual ordinance.
This is
that's
what, if you went into domestic animals and said, I want to be a hobby breeder,
right.
This is what they would give you.
Sort of direct, but it's not in the actual ordinance.
It is in there under sellers.
I got you.
But hobby breeder is not a seller.
Okay.
They're just somebody that has a couple litters accidentally. And what it does is the people that I deal with, if they had to respond to this, they would not have any more puppies. They can't afford them. Their health is terrible, and it's neglect. But if you go and see how many neglect charges we've given at domestic animal the last 10 years, you can put them on your hand. We don't give that citation.
Commissioner McDaniel.
And that's not, my point is, we need to put these in there.
Okay. Sir?
Well, and I come back over to you with regard to the enforcement aspect of this. What can we do to enhance the enforceability of the ordinance that we in fact have? Because right now, I think what Tom is talking about is are folks that aren't registered as hobby breeders, and and so we're not inspecting them. They're not required to adhere to the ordinance that we in fact have in place, and the enforcement's not there. It's not sufficient. And what obstacles are you running into that are prohibiting you from enforcing the ordinance that we in fact have in place?
We are enforcing the ordinance that we have in place. We have created a work rule, that's standard operating procedure, that came out in January for all of our staff to ensure that we are effectively enforcing the ordinance. So that was delivered to staff January 17th, 2023, where we've done a review of our ordinance and as well created that work rule. We've created the disposition forms. We are working with staff. Quite a bit of our staff are new. And so we are training them in the hobby breeder work rule as well as all of our other work rules. What we are looking for is more proactive, enforcement of the ordinance. And that would be an expanded position for animal control officers to get several additional officers out in the field. We're a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. So our staff are out there all day, every day. So you will be seeing very soon a request for additional officers to help us to enforce that ordinance for hobby breeders as well as all of our other activities that we receive.
I will say one thing, though, in response to that. So I spent some time, and it's been a bit, but I bet much hasn't changed out there. But when I spent some time driving around with Mr. Kemp, he really wasn't saying there weren't animal control officers driving around. It's just that, and maybe I'm paraphrasing, but my takeaway was, we might have more than a couple that just, are driving around in their air-conditioned vehicles, driving by, places that need to be inspected. And also, if they knock on a door and the citizen says, no, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, that's not a good answer. And some of that is dated. And Marcy, we're going to, after this, I don't want you to leave because, a lot has been improved in the last 12 months. And one of the things I'll say is we met yesterday and I asked you, not to throw my colleagues under the bus, and this isn't thrown, I said, how many of the commissioners have visited DAS in the last 6 months? And your answer was all of them. And I was like, wow, that's got to be a first. Because, I've been out there a lot, but hearing that they have as well. So this isn't something that's foreign to us. I speak for all of them here that animal welfare is obviously something that's a major concern for us. But we want to make sure, as I always say, there's meat on the bone, that, we don't just have a well-written ordinance and plenty of people driving around in trucks. But then, Tom, who's got, boots on the ground, is seeing stuff that isn't impressive.
Yeah, but I say this.
Yes, sir. And then I'm going to go to Commissioner Colwell.
Then I'll be quiet, and I apologize because I was.
And then I'm going to.
I would invite all of you to sit down with me, because cases are better than, we can talk up here and she can talk and I can talk and who knows. But I would really appreciate it if any of you would sit down with me and go through some files that I have of enforcement issues that I've turned in. And they put my name on every single one, and I get nice threats on here occasionally, but I don't care. The animals are more important to this, and they give my name out. In fact, I have one case where the lady says, who turned me in? And instead of saying like they used to say, go to public records, you can find out, he says, I told him who it was. And that's fine with me. I don't care. But it used to be the policy was to tell them to go to public records that they could find out. Now they volunteer. It's Mr. Kemp that turned them in, which is fine. But if you guys would sit down with me, look at some of these files, it will be, I won't have to ever come up here again because you're going to respond to it. And if any of you would like to go out into the field with me and see what we deal with on a daily basis, that'd be great too.
But you know what I would say to that? Great. And that's up to all 5 of us here. But have you all sat down? Because if you've got this huge file, and I'm talking to the person that's getting paid, she's not a volunteer. She's running, and I've got a lot of positive things to say about the improvements I've seen in DAS. And I have a feeling that my colleagues would say the same thing. But it would seem like you're the ones that need to say, this is nice frosting.
I'll right here. I would love to sit down with you Thursday or Friday, both of you, and go through these files and have you answer or look at them and say, oh, why didn't we do this? Or, Tom, you were wrong this way. Any of you and anybody else that would like to be at that meeting, that would be a workshop.
Let me just take a little pause here. Mr. Klatzkow, did you have something you wanted to add?
I understand Mr. Kemp's frustration on this. We're frustrated too, but you just can't knock on somebody's door and kick it in to inspect. You need an administrative warrant to do that. And for administrative warrant, you're going to have to get probable cause. Mm-hmm. So, it's easy to regulate the commercial guys who have their stores and whatever, but a private homeowner, sometimes staff will look in the backyard to see what's going on, but they have no legal authority to go in there. They can ask, but if the owner says no, we're done. And there's nothing, there's no ordinance change you could do that will change that.
So for clarification, nobody's going to kick any doors in, but for clarification, if I have an animal control officer that drives by a house because they got because there was a complaint, they see 10 puppies out in the yard covered in blood and starving to death, they can't do anything.
No, they can.
What can they do?
Because now you've got the probable cause
Yeah,
and it's
okay.
right there.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if there's something going on inside of a house,
Right.
staff has no authority to go into that house, not without an administrative warrant, which is very difficult to get.
Okay. But like you said, they do have cause to investigate it and not just drive away and say, oh, the owner chased us off.
They look at the outside yard all the time.
I got you. Commissioner Colwell.
Hey, Mr. Kemp. If you remember my very first question, I wanted some clarity on what a hobby breeder was and, the definition that was given to me. And then Commissioner LaCastro asked you to enlighten us on what you feel may not be in our ordinance. And you read from the packet that's actually distributed from our DAS to individuals that want to be hobby breeders. But then you got out an example about, your neighbor's dog impregnated your dog and you have a litter and. No, he said he intentionally did that.
Right. No, I read.
He invited his neighbor over to impregnate his dog. You're talking about that your neighbor jumps the
First
fence.
of all, I didn't do any of that. Okay. All right. Let's bring this back to.
But not your neighbor, your neighbor's dog.
Example, just for example. Okay. All right. Just gotta correct it. Terry, strike the last 3 minutes. Go ahead, sir, Commissioner Cole.
But what, you gave an example of talking about you go to these homes and the dogs get pregnant and. I would think a hobby breeder have to have an intent. There'd have to be some intent there to create a breed, to create a litter. But you said you go to homes where these dogs get pregnant, they don't care about them, they just leave them to have the puppies in the yard. To me, that wouldn't be a hobby breeder. Now that is something that we have state statute on that. That's animal abuse. We have statutes in place already by the state. When something like that happens and it's reported, it goes much beyond DAS. DAS works alongside with the sheriff, and then the sheriff then will have an investigation into abuse of these domestic animals. But that, to me, is not a hobby breeder by your own definition. So the example you gave at the end was a little skewed. That's all I just want to put on
I really agree with you.
Yeah.
100%. But this is a way to keep people, a person that's going to sell them or give them away or whatever, if they have to adhere to these rules, they're not going to do it anymore. They're going to get their animals spayed or neutered, okay? That's what they're going to do. But you know what? I agree with you. But remember another comment I said, I look at this as neglect at least. But just go look in public records and see how many neglect charges we've given at Domestic Animal Service in the last 15 years that I know of. Very few. And we have a cruelty division at the Sheriff's Department now. And Chris Goldhorn is the leader of that. I took some pictures of some terrible, terrible situations. And actually, Domestic Animal Service had been at one of these houses, and I had actually taken 2 dogs from them that died of hookworms already. I sent these pictures to these 2 dogs in this cage full of feces, and one laying by the side of the road, just covered, matted, and all this. And I sent to Chris Goldhart, and I said, okay, you're the leader of this organization. Is this cruelty, neglect, or nothing? He answers me back. If you think you've seen cruelty, and I have this on text if anybody wants to read it. If you think you've seen cruelty, call 911 or our local office. And so actually, about 2 weeks later, I did just that because the lady, again, I'd already turned them in for breeding. They had a breeder permit, but they were still having puppies and nobody, whatever. I can show you that report also. And so I said, can I help you? And she goes, get off the property. I got off and I called 911. They sent 3 officers over. They didn't inspect anything. They called domestic animal. She came out. I haven't pulled that report up yet. But so I agree with you.
We don't know.
I think they all ought to get neglect charges. But that's the point.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is we have a system in place. I mean, ordinance has so much teeth, and then a criminal statute has a little bit more. But they all require us to have some level of probable cause or reasonable suspicion to act on.
What Mr. Pascal says is correct. But I don't want people to bang on doors. See, everybody wants to make it out like that's what I never said that.
No, I think identifying is fine enough, and then we'll take it from there.
To get a breeder permit, you sign a paper that says they can inspect the premises, just like a cat rescue here, like a sanctuary, or somebody that sits for pets. When they inspect those houses, they go inside, they're subject to much more search than the people that I'm dealing with. And that's what you should be doing. They sign a paper that say you can go in the premises. But if they tell them no, they don't go in. And that's, and that's how come the dogfighting thing wasn't ever caught. So, I mean, I'm not asking them to bang in doors. And as far as the idea that you have to get a warrant, for years and years, that's exactly what I've heard. Well, Tom, we can't do that without a warrant. Well, then why hadn't somebody stepped up and got with the court system and figured out a way to get a warrant real quick, just like the sheriff's department? But that's been an excuse forever, and so let's correct that one. There's one we can correct too.
Let's hear from Commissioner Saunders here, sir.
I think there's a couple takeaways from this discussion. Number one, I don't think we need to have a workshop with the county commission on the issue, but I do think that it would be helpful for the county attorney and staff to work with SNP and DAS and just see if there's any tweaks to the ordinance that are necessary. There may be some, there may not be. And then secondly, and I would suggest that you do that fairly quickly just to bring this to a conclusion. And then finally, I think you've indicated that you're going to need some additional staff for enforcement purposes. So perhaps during the budget process, you'll come back and let us know what you need, what those additional resources would be used for. And I think this would be a positive outcome of this hearing, knowing that there's going to be some further communication concerning the ordinance, and that you're going to come back and tell us what you need. And if that's acceptable to the board, I don't think we need to do anything this morning other than to recognize that we're not going to have an official workshop with the commission, but our staff and our attorney will take a look at the existing ordinance and see if we need to do anything. And maybe we do, maybe we don't.
Yeah, I would agree. I would love to hear the outcome of that, more aggressive discussion. You're fairly new in the seat and have turned around a lot of things. Mr. Kemp's, out there in the field. So I think the workshop number one should be between you all, and then, hear the feedback from us. One thing I will say, though, about, increasing staff, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, and we've had this conversation, but, I'll throw it out in the open air. Asking for additional staff is great, but I want to make sure that every staff member that you have is awesome. And, you know the example that I have. I'm going to say it right here without mentioning any names, but, when an irate citizen calls me up about an animal control officer that didn't represent the county in a really polished way, and before I even say the name, I give you the badge number, and you say, oh, God, I know exactly who that is. That's our worst ACO, and I've counseled him, X number of times. Working for the county is a privilege. I guarantee that person doesn't make $2 an hour. That's a person taking taxpayer dollars and driving around in a vehicle with stickers on it, representing the county. So, before we throw, extra manpower at DAS, I want to know that every single person up there is eligible to win an award from us, because this is an important, job. So I would say, we're here to empower you with what you do need, and if the problem is bigger than what you have staff for, but you have, and I'm not sitting here, Marcy, beating you up at all. We've had very healthy conversations, and I'm so proud to hear that everybody's, we've all gone to DAS and we've seen the changes. And before you exit the podium, I would like to give you the microphone and the last word to tell us a lot of the things that you have been doing, so we can get on the record. But, make no mistake, your job as a leader there is to assess your staff, as you have been doing. I loved hearing that you've added so many more volunteers, and some of the ones that maybe were sort of walking around with the polo shirt but stirring the pot and causing problems, you either counseled them or they realized they should volunteer somewhere else. But, the animal control officers are a key piece. We could have the best ordinance with all the teeth in it in the world, but if the people driving around the pickup trucks, don't want to be bothered with it, or, as the one ACO told a close friend of mine, if you don't like the answers, then go complain to your county commissioner, because they're the ones that set all the ordinances. And what he obviously didn't know is this person's a close friend of mine. So she called me in 30 seconds, and then, I was able to report it to you. But please do all you can to assess. I'd rather you be short of ACOs than have the wrong ones. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would love to, get a decent wage and work for DAS and help support, animal welfare and make it better in this county. So I don't see anybody else lit up. I would just like you to, the podium's yours, and don't miss an opportunity here to tell us some things that may be on the record that a lot of people who are watching or in the audience, or even just all of us hearing it at one time, the things that you've done at DAS in a short time as the director.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
I did want to recognize the Sheriff's Department, Chris Goldhorn, Lieutenant Chris Goldhorn. He's been an exceptional resource for us at Domestic Animal Services, as well as the other sheriff's officers. Each and any time we call for them, they come immediately. They are our support system as well. So I did want to make sure that was known, that they do an exceptional job, and they help us every single day with all of our tasks that we call for them for.
Okay. Is this you have a presentation here?
Yes, and this is...
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate, and educate us more on DAS and what you've done. And then also, like I said, I think the homework assignment here is exactly as Commissioner Saunders stated, is get together as a group, and it might even be more than Mr. Kemp. There's some other folks, and I know you're open to that, so it's not a big debate here, but go ahead, ma'am.
Absolutely, thank you. So the photo that you're looking at on the screen is a picture of the front of Domestic Animal Services. And going inside Domestic Animal Services, starting with our enforcement statistics, our animal control officers do incredible work. In calendar year 2022, they achieved an impressive 87.3% compliance rate. That means that 87.3% of violations were fully complied with. And for that very small percentage of violations that are not complied with, we move those forward to the special magistrate. Also in 2022, we issued 3,113 violations. And in just the past 60 days, we've issued 636 violations. We're on track to exceed last year's numbers already. Our officers also, as I mentioned previously, we're a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation. So we have officers on from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., and then we go to emergency calls from 9 p.m. To 7 a.m. And we responded to nearly 1,900 calls for service just in the past 60 days. In addition to our officers, our animal care staff at the facility are also doing incredible, amazing things. We have really ramped up our rescue efforts. Our pet placement partners have increased to 138, and we've developed a new rescue transport type program. And in calendar year 2022, never before have we transferred that many animals to organizations. We've transferred an incredible 855 animals to various different rescue organizations, with 533 of those animals being transferred out of Collier County and even out of Florida. The photograph on the right is a photograph that was post-Hurricane Ian, where the Humane Society Naples and Domestic Animal Services worked together. Humane Society Naples invited us to the airport, and we were able to transfer hundreds of animals out of Collier County to various different states to safety. And that is at a cost savings to the county as well. We just paid for the fuel to put them on the vehicle and get them to the airport. Same as the rescues that we're continuing to work with every single day. The rescues take on those animals. Some of them are broken, some of them have behavior issues, concerns, and they take care of them, both medically, behaviorally, and they find them really great homes. Our Helpful Hearts initiative, that is a program that we've expanded on. Every dog that comes into Domestic Animal Services, while it's in adoption, if it's heartworm positive, it now receives heartworm treatment. So it does not sit there and wait for an adopter to adopt them. We immediately start treating them. We have a 100% success rate currently with treating heartworm positive dogs. We've also increased our foster families to 348 families fostering in calendar year 2022. Our volunteers have also increased to nearly 300 volunteers that have donated almost 19,000 hours of service. That is a 28% increase from the previous year. And our volunteers, they're invaluable. As you guys saw when you toured Domestic Animal Services, they're there every day. They're out in the play yards, they're walking the dogs, they're socializing the dogs, socializing the cats, they're assisting adopters. Our volunteers are invaluable to our business and to the animals. And I can't thank them enough for all the hard work that they put in at no cost to Domestic Animal Services. They donate their time because they want to donate their time at our organization. Some facility improvements as well. You'll notice when you came to Domestic Animal Services, our lobby is now very professional. It's inviting. It's an environment now where people feel welcomed and they want to come to Domestic Animal Services. In the past, there were cats in that lobby. We removed them and put them in their own little room to make it an incredible environment for them as well. We've also added 3 commercial washing machines and 3 commercial dryers. We do upwards of 30 loads of laundry every single day. So those 3 loads of, those 3 washers and dryers do us very, very well at the shelter. All of our dogs and cats get clean blankets and towels every single day. Some additional facility improvements. If you take a look at this picture, I really want to reach out and thank our facilities division. They've been on site every day. They have been just amazing and incredible to work with. They have painted the buildings. They've built us shelving. They have fixed and repaired anything and everything that we've put in as far as work orders go. Even that fencing, if you'll notice toward the back of the photo, there's a white fence that's pretty far back. That was closer up to where we only had 1 building accessible for the public and for the volunteers. And now we have moved it back to make more dogs accessible for the public to adopt. Now, we didn't increase the amount of animals that we have, but rather we increased their accessibility. We increased their exposure so that they are getting adopted. Adoptions are very, very important to us as well. We've adopted 1,975 animals last year, which is a very impressive number. And in addition to facility upgrades, we also were very, very grateful to receive an extremely generous donation by the Benny Fund. The Benny Fund helped transform our play yards. We had 2 existing play yards that are in this photo. They expanded the fencing, and they put AstroTurf down, and then they created a 3rd play yard. Domestic Animal Services is now open 7 days a week. So those play yards are used every single day, 7 days a week. We expanded our hours to make us more accessible for the public. If you lose your dog, your cat, your horse, you should be able to come to us every single day to claim him. We shouldn't be closed on a Sunday as we were in the past. So we have increased our hours as well. And that's the presentation I have for you guys today. And thank you for this opportunity to speak with you.
I'm just going to chime in and say if you toured DAS a year ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago, it looks totally different now. So, and that's to your leadership and the group watching the stats come up. So, you know, nobody can question that or throw that under the bus. Those are facts. The thing that jumps out at me, and I would just, you know, reiterate it, is the 642 violators. You know, if it goes to the magistrate, nothing really happens, or it's not followed up, or whatnot. Sometimes that's where things sort of fall through the cracks. So, you know, I just encourage you to really stay, you know, focused on that. Writing somebody up for a ticket and then them actually doing something. I know that, and this might be a little dated, but when Mr. Kemp drove me by different houses, he had a stack of, you know, copies of violations. He's like, this house has been written up 20 times. Look at the dog out there in the sun. You know, it's skinny. It has no water. It has nothing, and maybe that's dated, but following it all the way to the end, you know, or else everything that happened up to that point was worthless. What the ACO did, worthless. Ordinance, worthless. I mean, unless in the end it was fixed, and it takes staff and your leadership to follow it, you know, all the way to the end. Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you. I don't think we need a motion. I think staff understands that we want you to work with the county attorney and Mr. Kemp and Orlando, Ms. Orlando, to see what changes may need to be brought back to the commission on the ordinance, and just let us know what you need during the budgeting process. But I don't think we need a motion or anything.
Agreed. Unless there's comments, anybody?
No,
Okay.
I'm happy about the expanded hours.
Yep.
'Cause I remember I had a couple of runners back in the day, and I actually went in and had to break them out of jail on Sunday. That was before I was a commissioner, by the way.
Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing us, and welcome to the commission, both of you, the new ones.
Thank you.
Ms. Patterson, what's next?
Commissioners, well, we're moving on into item 11. Looking at the time, we could do a couple of different things. If you want to take the 11A, I think there'll be some conversation about that regarding code enforcement liens.
Yep.
Or we could also, if you're looking to go to lunch at noon, we could take the sand item and then come back for the items with more discussion.
Yeah, let's take sand and then see how long. Let's I had like 12:20, 12:25. I mean, we could, straight up noon lunch is fine as well. But let's see if a couple of the ones that are sort of just quick hits. Let's start with sand.
Absolutely. Okay, item 11B is a recommendation to award invitation to bid number 23-8076, beach compatible sand supply for emergency beach fill to Vulcan Construction Materials LLC, Stewart Materials LLC, and Garcia Mining Company LLC. Authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreements and make a finding that this item promotes tourism. Mr. Andrew Miller, your coastal zone manager, is here to present and or answer questions.
Sir.
Thank you, County Manager. And good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Andy Miller, your coastal zone manager. Happy to answer any questions about this item. We've got a emergency berm to build. We've got a lot of sand to put on our beaches. We knew fairly early on after the hurricane that we were probably looking at a lot more sand than one supplier was going to be able to provide in a timely manner. And so we immediately went out with an ITB to get some additional suppliers on board. And this item will allow us to do that. With your permission, we'd like to get this thing going hopefully by mid to late March. And we've got 75,000 tons available to get us started, but this item will allow us to do the project entirely.
Is there anything you can tell us, and then I'll go to Commissioner McDaniel, anything you can tell us, a short version of over the last couple of weeks as your team and our county staff's been assessing, beaches and berms and erosion and different things. Can you give us sort of in a nutshell the latest info on what you're seeing? Like you said, no question, more sand is needed. Give us an idea of where and when. I know I spent half a day at Pelican Bay and driving up and down the beach there with our staff, and I was really shocked. It was worse than I even thought, and the sand is gone. So but give us in a nutshell an update on what you're seeing since you've got boots on the ground.
Sure. You may remember the early assessments were closer to the neighborhood of about 500,000 cubic yards that we're going to need. But as the weeks went by, we surveyed the beaches and we got our designer on board to do some measurements and volume quantities. And the good news is he's whittled that down to something closer to 300,000 yards. And so whether that's the result of Mother Nature putting sand back on the beach or our eyes were deceived early on just because it was such an abrupt change, I think what we're looking at is something a lot less than we were feared we were going to have to put on the beach. So the quantities now are closer to 300,000 yards.
But we still locked in a competitive price. So what I'm hearing is we're going to be spending less than we initially thought, or is it 300,000 cubic yards, but it's at twice the price. How has the price changed?
No, the price will remain the same as per the item. And the other thing is this sand's going to be available if we have an emergency next year or the year after as well. These additional sources will be available for us. So no, the prices are set, and if we're going to get more or less sand, need less sand, then we hope to get bids to the effect that it'll be less money.
Right. Commissioner McDaniel.
Well, first off, I'll make a motion for approval as recommended, and then I have a comment.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Sir, your comment.
A quick comment question. Which mine is Vulcan planning on utilizing for this bid?
That's the Moorhaven mine?
The Moorhaven mine, okay.
Correct.
And Garcia's location?
Clewiston, I believe.
Okay. Okay, because I'm familiar with Stewart. We've used Stewart in the past, so I just wanted to hear where the deposit was that we were in fact bringing in, because that's going to have an impact on our truck traffic and all that sort of.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I have some maps available if you care to look, but.
I'll volunteer as a comment if in the event that we need to help herd the truckers with regard to that. I'd be happy to work with our staff to get the information out to those truckers so that we're having this is a direly needed enhancement for restoration for our beaches, but I certainly want to mitigate the negative impact to our residents as well.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Any comments? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
What else, Ms. Patterson? Any other quick hits we can knock out?
We had items formerly 16F5 and 16F6, the two tourism items. Those might be good ones to take. That's the JW Marriott and the Visit Florida. So we could start with item 11D, formerly 16F5, which was continued from December 10th, 2022. This is a recommendation to approve an increase of authorized expenditures through an exemption from the competitive process to JW Marriott Marco Island for tourism promotional expenses up to $85,000 per fiscal year for a 5-year period, and make a finding that this expenditure promotes tourism and that the exemption waiver is in the best interest of the county. This was moved via the separate requests of Commissioner Saunders, LaCastro, and McDaniel. And Mr. Paul Behrens is here. Your tourism director is here to answer questions or present.
Okay.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, sir.
I'm here to answer any question, give any feedback or insight as required.
Okay, Commissioner Hall and then Commissioner McDaniel.
You know, when I read this, I'm reading that we're spending $85,000 a year for 5 years so that JW Marriott can advertise for themselves. And my thoughts are, why in the world would we spend $85,000 a year of taxpayer money when they're going to do it themselves?
And I appreciate that. What we do, we actually have a sales and convention team that are out on the streets. They're actually soliciting and securing leads and big conventions that come to market. About 30% of all of our visitation is actually meetings and conventions. We're not just doing that for one particular property. We're actually representing every one of our hotels, the small boutique hotels as well. What we end up doing is we bring those opportunities to the hotels which they would fit. Some of them the conventions are far too large for some of the smaller boutique hotels, so we fit that. At that time, we turn it over. It becomes a negotiation, if you will. We know that these meetings are considering many other destinations. It's very, very highly competitive because the economic impact is so significant. I'll just use the example of JW Marriott, but it could be Naples, Grand, and all of them. We'll continue to negotiate, fine-tune, and really refine it to the point that they're about as tight as they can get on the offer. And the reconnaissance will also indicate that there are other destinations that are bidding, and they're usually probably going to have some CVB or destination enhancements, if you will. So what we have done is we have actually created a stair step, the maximum ever, and it would require 950 room nights or more. The maximum ever we put on the table will be $10,000. How that multiplies out, just to give you an example, it's about twice the amount of TDT that would be collected. Sorry, other way around. The $10,000 would be half of the TDT that would be collected on that meeting block. What we do is we simply say, if you believe that this is enough to just put them over the edge, lock and load them into a future meeting, we will provide a credit towards something like food and beverage for this meeting. JW has tightened the screws as much as they can, but this would just be enough to put it over the edge. We put that as a credit for them to apply to secure this very significant meeting. So we operate right now. We have secured, or we're engaging conversations as far as 2029 for these major conventions that are coming into market. And actually, to date, just the incentives that we have put on the table through 2029, working through Oxford Economics and Destination Marketing International's model, it's about $24.3 million worth of economic impact direct to the destination. So it is a final straw to just nudge it over the edge. Coming out of the pandemic, we know that we were hit hard and we lost that entire 30% of meetings. We are trying to get the wheels under the destination to truly catapult at this point.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. So if we take the $85,000 away, JW Marriott's not going to say, oh, shoot, we can't do it now.
It may not be enough for that particular meeting to decide on our destination as where they would like to go, because the Marriott would have to trade off some other use or other more profitable.
But do you think that would cause them to get creative with their dollars and not on our dollars?
I do believe that they are highly creative. We're only talking of a small amount of numbers compared to the hundreds, if not thousands, of meetings that they're bringing in. The conversations truly are very, very fruitful, very open. They are coming saying, this is as tight as we can go, and we'll probably lose it otherwise.
And there's only one Southwest Florida in the world, and there's people that want to come here. I'm playing devil's advocate here because I can't see justifying giving a company like that 85 grand of taxpayer money with a fuzzy figure of what it does bring back.
And as well, I want to make it certain that it's not just the JW that we are applying these funds, but
we're giving the money to JW.
We are opening up the opportunity that should those big block conventions come to fruition, we have the opportunity to be able to secure it. In the past, we have been under the threshold, if you will. I'm looking to see where we're at right now. For instance, 2000 and give you an example. 2025, for instance, we have 3 major conventions, and we only have put on the table $25,000 of incentive. But in the next year and a half, we do believe, and if you've hired us to do what we need to do, which is to drive that meeting block, we're going to do everything we can to try to help stoke the fire. What we want to do is set ourselves up for that success. And we are highly frugal when you consider that the threshold. If we're talking about a meeting of 50 to 100 room nights, we're only talking about an enhancement of $500 to $1,000. I mean, and those would be applied to very small boutique hotels. Case in point, might not have the wherewithal to be able to do that. But the JW is bringing in thousands of conventions, and we just would love to bring those larger, really affluent economic impact engines to the destination.
Commissioner McDaniel, and then Commissioner Saunders, you're on deck.
And to your point, Commissioner Hall, these are, agreed, they're taxpayer dollars, but they are they're user taxpayer dollars collected through the TDT. These are consumption dollars that are being collected by our hoteliers and convention inventory, if you will. So it's not just a straight pump out of the ad valorem per se. Number one, my concern with which is why I asked for this to be pulled, was the waiver of the procurement process, the 5-year term, and the utilization of P cards in lieu of POs. I had a meeting with Crystal yesterday, and she talked about the difficulties she has from an auditing perspective when we go over into the utilization of the P card. So my suggestion here that may help even Commissioner Hall a little bit is shorten this window from 5 to 1. Go ahead and do this increase to $85,000 for 1 year. Allow the clerk's office to increase their and they are working on a better audit trail process within their own system. But my suggestion is shorten this, and I'm aware as well that these conventions are planned 3 and 4 and 5 years out. It's not to say that we won't do this again a year from now, but I would like for us to I'd like to shorten this from 5 to 1 year, and I would like to have a report next year when this item comes back as to the efficacy of what's in fact transpired and how the clerk feels with regard from an audit perspective. So that's my rationale for pulling this item, and I'll make that in the form of a motion if you wish.
We've got a couple. Commissioner Saunders, and then I've got some comment.
Thank you. I pulled the item because I also had spoken with Ms. Kenzel concerning some issues that she had. And also, Commissioner McDaniel, you're our representative to the Tourist Development Council, so you probably have more information about this than the rest of us. So I would be inclined to follow your lead. But I do want to make sure that going forward, the clerk does have some comfort as to how this all takes place. But I would feel somewhat compelled to follow your recommendation. So I'll second your motion just to get it on the floor. But
Okay. So I pulled it for similar concerns. I mean, I love it, but I hate it. Don't love the 5 years. I like people to have to come to the podium or send us a letter or however, smoke signals, every 12 months and earn the money. Also too, I mean, and I don't want to oversimplify things, but I don't want to hear we used $85,000 worth of taxpayer money to pay for a cheese tray or a pasta bar for a group that was going to come here anyway. And all we did was offset the cost of money that JW Marriott was already going to expend. So, you're, say fairly new in the seat, but no longer. You definitely have been tried and tested. So I feel confident with your oversight and with Commissioner McDaniel being our representative on the TDC. But we've got a clerk of courts back there that has a really sharp pencil and a calculator that has fresh batteries in it, and we all appreciate that. And the things that she brings to our attention, and some of us already had stuff written in the margins before we met with Ms. Kinzel, has real merit. So your job's to make sure that it doesn't have merit and that this is an investment, not an offsetting of costs. Because if we give JW Marriott $10,000 for a pasta bar, do you know what it costs JW Marriott to do their own pasta bar and have us pay for it retail? It costs them $1,500 to do that pasta bar, and they pocket the difference. Now, I'm oversimplifying. I'm not saying that's a real example, but there's been some things in the past that actually was a real example. And so to me, if the investment is in advertisement or things that really are making a big difference, or it is something that maybe I scratch my head on, but you stand there and say, Commissioner, I'll follow my sword on this one. This was a small expense that put us over the edge and brought back exponential dollars. It's just, I don't want anybody to make a fool out of us at the county. And a lot of people get rich off the county at times because we don't have tight oversight, and we're changing that exponentially. And this is another example of, I don't like to beat up poor history, but I like to learn from it. I think previous to maybe even all of us, a lot of expenditures in this area were loose, to say the least. So that's just my comment. I love the idea of the every year, because I sit here and say, and it could be an easy approval every 12 months. Hey, it's a no-brainer, but, let's talk about it. What did we see over the last 12 months? Hey, you were supposed to give us a report. We never got one, or, the money wasn't spent correctly, or it was okay. It gives us a chance to reevaluate. So that's, my comment. But I like the idea of the motion, and the second, I certainly would support it. Commissioner Colwell, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think in December we looked at this, and that's why it's here today. And I think back in December, it was 105,000 or somewhere around that ballpark. And I think I had questioned how long the program has already been up and running. And I think we all wanted to see these large conventions connected to the past, like a hard number, like saying, yeah, we definitely know this large convention, 5 years ago was part of, the result of us giving us $105,000 to the Marriott. And I agree with Commissioner McDaniel that I think this should just be a recurring thing that we visit and see hard numbers and start tracking it along the way. And because who knows, 2 years down the road, maybe Four Seasons would be the better idea, And then what do we do then? And, they pay a lot more for a room than the Marriott does. So in retrospect, that creates more tax back into the tourism dollar, collection fund, just by per se, just the cost of the room itself and the tax. It's, so I definitely agree that I feel more comfortable, and I think some of my colleagues do too, with, revisiting this on a rotating basis.
Very, very fair questions, and I appreciate it. I would concur with 1 year. We can certainly do that. I do want to set some framework, and Mr. Chair, I have stood here before and said, absolutely nothing gets paid and goes across my desk without a lot of analysis. I actually approve each one of these. I make sure that it's in the shoulder season, there's a need, that the return on investment is significant. I actually have to authorize that. We also track.
Do you think that wasn't happening before
I
at
just
your
had
level?
to, I had to say it for, you know what, it doesn't matter what has happened before. I know what I'm doing right now is very, very focused on the bottom line, so I can't speak for the past.
But you feel like you've tightened the process, and it's not to throw sticks at the people before you, but you as a fresh set of eyes that have come in, you've injected things into the process that possibly weren't there, or that you feel are a lot more robust now as far as oversight.
I will simply
Is that a true
say
statement?
that the filter to which I ask and challenge is very very poignant, and
That's fair.
So that's one case. We do track very, very definitely, and some of the interesting nuances. While we certainly want to stay within the purchasing procedures and such, in a lot of cases we will commit, if you will, an investment, but perhaps 2020 comes along and meetings cancel. That money doesn't go to anybody. It literally gets pulled back. So we've got a list of status of whether it's booked, whether we lost the business. So some of these numbers go up and down. To the point of Four Seasons, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. The funding that we have set aside for the entire county, we have $200,000 for investment across all of the hotels. It just so happens that those of the largest big boxes are conventions are the JW. Second would be Naples Grand, and we'll see how Four Seasons. But you know what? It's a matter of where we bring a convention of 800 individuals who could actually host that. It wouldn't be some of the small boutique, but we're definitely tracking it very, very articulate. So.
Let me ask a stupid question then. Do we? So we don't do the same thing for Naples Grand, the
No, we
two
do.
Ritzes? We do. Okay.
We do, absolutely.
Right. We're just
No,
talking about this one right
That's
now.
what I was saying. It just happened to be that the JW, by volume of conventions, do more. But right there, just behind them, is Naples Grand, for sure.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second that I think we all agree with. Trimming this to 1 year and continuing the tight oversight. Any other comment? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Anything you think that's a quick hit, or should we break for lunch?
We have the second one of these two tourism items.
Okay.
That is the Visit Florida. I'll read that one in. This is formerly item 16F6 and now item 11F. This also was continued from December 10th. This is a recommendation to approve an increase of authorized expenditures through an exemption from the competitive process to Visit Florida for membership fees and destination marketing programs up to $150,000 per fiscal year for a 5-year period, to allow purchasing card use when the use of a purchase order is not possible or practical, to make a finding that these expenditures promote tourism and that the exemption waiver is in the best interest of the county. This was moved to the regular agenda via separate requests of Commissioner McDaniel and LaCastro.
Okay. Commissioner McDaniel, what do you think? We're going to carbon copy the last motion on this one?
Ditto.
Okay. I second it. Any comments or questions? It's a similar type thing, but I don't want to stifle anybody. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So it'll pass 4-1 with the same change in verbiage to 1 year. Okay, sir? Thank you.
4-1.
Sorry?
Who voted against?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I said unanimous. Did I say 4-1? Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke. Unanimous.
Co-wall down there on the
Okay.
end. These-
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Four to-
Correction, passes unanimously with the changes as stated to 1 year. Okay, what else, ma'am?
Let's go to lunch.
Okay, yep, we'll break for lunch, come back here. What do y'all think, 1:15 do it? Okay, come back at 1:15.